So right now we have this future astronaut, and I don't know who he had to call, but it looks like he is in this SpaceX suit and Tesla getting ready for round 2. Absolutely love it. Let's take a second look. Okay, right now we have a French bulldog. It looks like taking Bob's place for launch right now. This is so funny. We'd love to see it, guys. And so for those of you tuning in, be sure to use that hashtag LaunchAmerica on social media and show us how you're getting ready for liftoff. So earlier in the show, we polled users to see which NASA logo you're sporting for today's launch, and the results are in. So it looks like about 62% of you are wearing the meatball today, and that leaves the worm falling a little bit behind. But hey, now that the worm is back, maybe y'all will be sporting it more often. And so with that, let's head back to Marie at NASA Kennedy. Marie?
Thanks, Tahira. We have some really spirited reactions here. We're looking live at the ONC walkout doors, but I just have to tell you, Leland threw up his arms in the air in victory when he saw more people sporting the meatball, and Lauren looks like someone just kidnapped her dog.
I am shook. Go worm, go away worm.
Oh, wow. You can't predict, how everyone else feels. That's the beauty of diversity of opinions,
And other traditions like the meatball and the worm, or a card game that we play called Possum's Fargo. And you have to play enough hands to where the commander loses a hand before we can walk out. So that's probably going on right now. They're getting ready to have Doug lose his hand.
Yes.
And then we can get in the elevator and come out and get in the spaceship.
Yep, so we're giving them that moment in private. And Leland, I wanted to ask you too, because we had a scrub really late in the count yesterday. We got just under T-minus 17 minutes, and we were all like, oh, it was like a collective groan across the country, everybody watching. And I know you've been through a delay once yourself on one of your shuttle flights. And I wonder, what does it take to kind of refocus yourself on day 2? I mean, do you go through all the exact same preparations? Do you do anything a little different? Is there a little bit of superstition involved?
No, not really. I mean, we try to keep everything the same way because we've practiced this way, and now we're in the real day. We're playing this way. So if you stay the same, kind of the same form and function that you've done before, nothing else hopefully will happen that's out of character to your mission. So I think we just try to stay the same way.
Yeah, that's good insight. And I know, Bob and Doug, we heard them on the comms after that as they were detanking Falcon 9, and we're waiting for them to get out of Crew Dragon, and they were just cool, calm, collected, thanking the teams for doing a good job. Nobody's getting launch fever. And, they're going to do the same thing today. No matter how many people are watching, they're going to make the same call as they would if nobody was paying any attention.
Right, and I was talking to CJ Sturkow before I launched my first mission, and he said that he made a mistake and flipped the wrong switch on Ascent, and he glommed on that and was about to make another mistake. But he said that he had to just focus and get back to, grace under pressure, so that he would make a third mistake, which could have been, catastrophic. So that's what we always try to do, is to try to do everything the same way, be very deliberate, but be very graceful, not really try to overthink something, but try to stay safe.
Absolutely.
And calm.
Yeah, that's so key, and I know that's a top of mind for all the SpaceX and NASA teams working on this today. And again, we're just standing by. We expect the crew is going to be leaving the suit-up room in just a couple of minutes, so we're giving them those last few minutes in private at the ONC building. And again, we're looking at the pad here. One of the other things that struck me, we watched the videos about Bob and Doug, and when I went home on Wednesday, because people saw, a lot of people who were watching and then are maybe watching again today, saw the videos about them, learned a little bit about their military background. My husband's a Marine, so he's like super pumped about Doug. Doug tweeted Semper Fi, and so I know like all the Marines out there are like just super pumped about seeing this, and the airmen that are watching Bob, seeing them represent the Air Force. I mean, it's just such a cool moment for our military community, and as a military spouse, I definitely feel some of that pride.
I saw Charlie Bolin last night coming from the restaurant, and he was very excited about Doug as a Marine, and he's a Marine, and so Semper Fi was definitely something he said. Godspeed Semper Fi, go Crew Dragon. So it's our military people that are helping us with this launch, with the recovery, with all these other things, is very important to the success of the mission.
Absolutely. And we want to turn our attention back to the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building. If we could, we want to take you to a picture of the doors. There they are. Those are the doors at the back of the crew quarters building, and it's an area where family, friends, and members of the media can share one final moment with the crew before launch. Now, the walk through those doors has signaled the beginning of the march towards launch for every American mission to space since 1968. This is the moment that is immortalized on film and video for 400 different astronauts from all the way through Space Shuttle, serving 150 total missions, and soon, the weather cooperates, mission number 151 with the first 2 commercial crew astronauts. These doors carry with them a legacy of purpose and action, and today they will announce to all of us the start of this, NASA's SpaceX demo-2 mission.
And you saw just a little bit of my walkout from STS-129, my last mission. And I remember having my friends and family out there. There was my chemistry teacher that was in the crowd. She got me turned on to science and helped me actually become an astronaut. And I just remember her being in the crowd saying, "Go Leland!" And it was just such a memorable moment for me. It kind of got more rocket fuel in my veins, getting me ready for my mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were just looking at a live picture outside of the building where we could see some of the folks gathered. We could see Doug and Bob's immediate families. There's a small contingent of media there. I mean, normally that place would be just kind of jam-packed with as many people as we could fit in there to capture that moment. We, of course, had to scale that back a little bit to maintain social distancing, but there's still a very excited group of people standing outside the building right now waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, it's so cool to see their families there and that they have that moment with them prior to getting inside of the Teslas. I mean, seeing that the last time we made that attempt was this incredibly emotional moment. I have no doubt it will also be emotional again. But yeah, that I can only imagine it's, in that moment when they're just waving goodbye for the last time before flying. I mean, Leland, were you nervous? Were you...
At that moment we were, we've been a little jovial in the suit up walkout, but I think at that moment we were thinking about our families, leaving our families, but then at the same time we're going to do this incredible thing for helping advance our civilization. We are working as a team, all the other teams now with SpaceX and NASA and people all around the world really, in recovery and all these things, helping us get to space so we can advance our civilization. And I think those moments are really heartfelt for us, that a team of people have helped us get to this point.
Absolutely. And we are looking at a live picture now of Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley walking down that hallway in the astronaut crew quarters. We just saw Doug wave at the screen, and they're just turning the corner, getting inside that elevator. And this, you can't see it from here, but there is a banner hanging there. You can kind of see it in the back. There's a banner hanging on the wall of the elevator with the signatures of all the people who worked on this mission. So it was really important for them to hang that up in there so Bob and Doug could see it.
Yeah, we see that, and we see all those signatures of people that have helped us through training, through fit check, through all of these moments and getting ready for this mission. And it feels like they're going along with us on the ride.
Absolutely. And as we wait for the crew to come downstairs to the first floor, we will pause to honor today's efforts with our national anthem. Kelly Clarkson just blew us away with a fantastic rendition Wednesday. Here she is again.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rock alive, the bombs bursting in our gate proof
goosebumps listening to that. I mean, it doesn't get old. We heard it Wednesday, but I mean, I could hear that every day of the week.
She was blown.
Yeah, amazing. That's a live look again at Launch Complex 39A. We are awaiting astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley to walk out of the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building any minute now, so we're going to be ready to cut to that shot just as soon as we get the word that they're ready to walk out that doors, excuse me. Again, looking like it's been a beautiful start to the day here on Cape Canaveral, but we're keeping a close eye on weather because it looks a little iffy as we get later into the afternoon, closer to launch time, which again is 3:22 this afternoon.
It always blows me away every time I visit Florida is, 1 hour it's this beautiful, clear, gorgeous day, and then an hour later it's a thunderstorm.
You said it. Welcome to our world.
And then an hour later, it's back to clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Just similarly to last attempt, right? I mean, just 15, 20 minutes later, it was good to go.
I know, it hurt my soul because we have this instantaneous launch window. It's not like with shuttle where we could give it a couple more minutes because you had a 10-minute window. We have a single second to get this off the ground, so everything's got to be just right. The conditions all have to be green at that moment.
Again, Mother Nature showing she's in charge.
Absolutely. And we just heard we're about 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds now from seeing the crew walk out of those doors. So we are standing by to show you that moment live. There's a live look at the ONC walkout doors.
Marie, I think my STS-129 patch is still over top of the door. There's a bunch of patches up there unless they've removed them and put space station patches up there. But this is a very solemn moment for walkout from, a storied legacy of Apollo and seeing Apollo astronauts walk out of these doors. And now we're getting back to U.S. astronauts launching from American soil, walking through these doors again. Incredible moment in the era of space travel.
And we saw some just beautiful moments when they walked out on Wednesday, and looking forward to seeing those again. I was perusing all of the different newspapers and stories online and just taking in all the photographs, and there the doors are opening.
Here they come.
And there they are, NASA astronauts.
Small crowd, but big cheers.
NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, Doug on the left, Bob on the right, waving to the crowd there to cheer them on. There are their families right in front of them.
The virtual hugs, a very special moment. Fist bumps.
You can hear them.
Now they are getting into the Tesla Model X that's going to take them to the launch pad, being strapped into their seats.
Their suit techs are attaching their umbilicals, so integrated into the Teslas. These are not just any Tesla you can just buy off the web or in a Tesla dealership. They've been outfitted with cooling units, and that white umbilical, similar to what you saw in the suit room, that umbilical is being connected to the suit to provide cooling air to the astronauts while they're on the way to the pad. And those Falcon wing doors are closing.
Super sleek.
A rapid departure from the Astrovan.
Yes, I would say so.
And their flight surgeon is in the front seat in the passenger side, taking the journey along with them.
As I mentioned last time, we always think about the technology and the rockets, but this is what it's all about, the families coming together, supporting the families, us working together as a team to ensure they get up there safely and back home safely for their families.
And I couldn't hear everything they were saying, but I did catch Bob telling his son to be good for mom, make her life easy. As a parent, I appreciate that.
See that prominent NASA meatball.
Now, as we watch the convoy begin their journey to Pad 39A, to our SpaceX and NASA family who over the years made this mission a reality and who have worked this launch campaign up to this point, we have you here in our thoughts.
And we wish every one of you could be here to see this up close, but we want you to be part of this journey regardless of where you call home and regardless of where you're watching from today. And so for the next few minutes, we are going to follow the convoy, but highlight those whose words and hands and thoughts built all that we see here today. We hope all of you watching can feel the pride each of these NASA and SpaceX team members has for this drive out to the pad.
This is Laura Segura from the Commercial Crew Program. We're so excited about this historical day. Congratulations on being a part of the very first mission for human space flight, commercial human space flight ever. We're behind you, Bob and Doug.
I'm Nicole from SpaceX in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Congratulations to SpaceX for hitting another major milestone, and safe travels to Bob and Doug.
Bob and Doug, as the launch vehicle chief engineer, we've got a lot of our launch vehicle team here to wish you a very wonderful safe ride on the Falcon 9. Coming up to demo-2, we're so excited for you. And launch America, it's time to launch. Let's go.
Hi, this is Perla from Hawthorne headquarters. We want to wish Bob and Doug a safe trip to the International Space Station. Go Dragon!
It's been 9 years in the making. This is such a historic time, and our team has worked so hard, and we're very excited to be here. Go Bob and Doug!
Hi, this is Sam from McGregor, Texas. Go Bob and Doug, go NASA, and go SpaceX.
Sean Roach from Johnson Space Center. Bob and Doug, wishing you a great flight. I just want to tell you, good luck.
Hi, I'm Dustin Kamak with NASA Kennedy's Communications and Public Engagement Directorate, and we all want to wish Bob and Doug safe travels and Godspeed. You are both an inspiration to us all. Now, let's get out there and launch America. Let's do it. Come on. Launch America.
I love seeing that group of people. I mean, we saw all those different groups of folks from NASA and SpaceX, from all different walks of life that have come together to make this happen. And that was just a small fraction of them. Look at that shot. That is so cool.
Wow. A little thumbs up from, I guess that's from Bob.
Yeah, and you know, it took a little bit of creativity to get this shot to happen. We have a chase vehicle that's on the other side of the road, which is of course shut down, so we could get a camera in there and follow them out. So we are really thankful to Kennedy Space Center Protective Forces for helping us make that happen, so we could see Bob and Doug all the way out to the launch pad.
My ride out was a little bit different than what they're experiencing in this Tesla, because we had the Astrovan had bench seats on each side, and we could look across at each other as we were driving out, and it was moments where we would tell some jokes, but sometimes we just look at each other, and we had such gratitude for having this opportunity to launch into space and to think about all the people that had a hand in helping us get in that vehicle to drive out to the launch pad, to get ready for this momentous moment. And I think that's probably, even though they're sitting, side by side, I think they're probably thinking of the gratitude and the people that have helped them get here, so that they can be on the, the pointy end of the rocket, getting a chance to go up to space. It's just a momentous moment.
And they're listening to some tunes too, I heard, right, Lauren?
Yeah. There are at least 3 songs on their playlist that are super interesting. The first is AC/DC's Back in Black. You know that one?
Yeah, well, who doesn't?
Right. Another one that they're listening to is the elevator music from the Blues Brothers film, The Girl from Ipanema.
Oh,
Leland.
Okay.
Got another career.
That's enough.
Career number 3.
That's enough.
NFL, astronaut, musician.
And of course, they are also listening to the Star Spangled Banner, the Army French Horns version.
Now, we didn't have tunes in the Astro van.
No?
And I know that the Tesla has a really kicking stereo system. Is that still the custom stereo system that's in the Tesla?
I haven't been in this one, so I don't know what they're rocking, but I'm sure it's pretty cool.
And again, just for some perspective, they left the operations and checkout building just a minute ago, and so it's about a 9-mile drive from there to the launch pad. It takes them around 20 minutes, kind of depends on how quickly they're trucking.
The other thing sometimes that you hear as you're in the convoy is the helicopter, the Huey helicopter flying overhead. And it's kind of also, you're thinking military, you're thinking really important things, and it's a moment that also kind of solidifies in you that, hey, something big is about to happen. And that whoop, 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 the sound of that Huey is in your head. And it feels good that all those people are helping you get there safely.
Yeah, I think we heard that actually coming by this building earlier, because we were talking. I was like, I hope that's what I think it is.
And it was pretty low because it was pretty loud.
You could feel it, too.
I could feel it.
I took this drive yesterday in my rental car, and granted it wasn't in a Model X, and I'm not an astronaut, but driving to 39A, that same route, and trying to put myself, imagine myself in that headspace, it was pretty awesome. I got to figure out how to get on Falcon 9.
Lauren, we're all astronauts. We're in space.
That is true.
You just got to get on the rocket.
Yeah, well, Leland, there's a big group of people that want you there.
I think we should, listen to them.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
I think
Maybe we should make that a poll question.
Yeah. Well, we should all maybe go to space. What do you think?
I am on board. I mean, not literally right now, but I would like to be on board.
Lauren, would you go with us?
Absolutely.
Okay, poll question.
We have so many people watching online, sending well wishes to Bob and Doug. I mean, it started early this week as we were ramping up for Wednesday, and I feel like it's just been this buildup of momentum because, we were following along Wednesday, and now we're all following along Saturday, and we have people watching from home that hopefully don't have to work today and can really tune into what's going on here.
And we, as astronauts, truly appreciate all the support, all the social media feeds, and we think about, our families. We saw Megan and Karen there with their sons, wishing Doug and Bob well wishes and Godspeed as they head off in these Teslas to launch pad 39A that launched the Apollo astronauts. And I think, this is just one of those moments where everyone in this country is coming together to wish them well, to get them into space safely. It's a really great day.
And they are just now on Saturn Causeway. They just made that right turn onto Saturn Causeway. So to the right of the screen, that building is the Operations and Support Building 2. And on the left, it's out of view right now, is the Vehicle Assembly Building, that iconic building that processed the Space Shuttle and Saturn V rocket also.
That's where that mobile transporter it used to take out the Apollo, Saturn V rockets and the Space Shuttle. It's just an incredible machine.
And where they're passing right now, I mean, if we were to run outside, we could wave because we are off to the right of your screen there at the press site where you see group of media there. So from this point, they've still got about 3 miles to go from here.
I'll see you guys later. I'll be back in a minute.
You're gonna go hop in. And obviously, it's not just Bob and Doug's Tesla. There's a number of cars in that convoy. They're being escorted by Kennedy Space Center Protective Forces and also SpaceX security. They have a flight surgeon there with them. And we've seen just a sprinkle of folks along the way. Normally, we'd have a whole lot more people out here watching this. But we really appreciate you watching online and from home. Again, wherever you are, at the beach, watching on your phone, your tablet, whatever mobile device you have, we're going to be here every step of the journey, taking you through it moment by moment. There's a cool shot with the worm on the roof.
There we go.
The second place worm, yes.
The second place worm.
So, Leland, when I drive down this road on the way to 39A, on the left, there's that area where the crawler used to drive. Can you tell us a little bit about the crawler?
Yeah, right there you can see the kind of the gravel where the crawler actually crushes that gravel almost into sand. It's so heavy. When the shuttle will go out and the Apollo Saturn V rocket will go out, and it's just, this thing moves at a glacial rate to get out there because it's got this huge rocket or shuttle on it. But I had a chance to see that when my shuttle went out one day with Alan Poindexter, and it's just this enormous, tracks and vehicle, but you guys do it in a different way, don't you? You don't go out of the vehicle assembly building. You have your own building.
We have a hangar right there on the pad, so we just roll the rocket up the hill.
You kind of do it like a Soyuz, where you just raise it up right there from horizontal to vertical, and it's done.
Yeah. Horizontal integration, so you don't need an enormous building in order to process the rocket and mate drag into the pad at the very top of the hill. You raise it up vertical with the transporter erector.
And again, all these efficiencies to help us get people to space faster and safer, and this is going to be the future of space travel. And also the relationship between NASA and SpaceX working together as a team to get people on.
And at this point, the convoy is approaching pad 39A, and they're entering what is known as the BDA, or Blast Danger Area. Now, before any pad technicians, engineers, or astronauts enter that area around the launch pad, the SpaceX and NASA teams do an internal go, no-go poll to make sure everything is clear.
This storied launch pad, which has been the beginning point for so many firsts, is the perfect backdrop for today's historic launch that marks a new first and a new era in human spaceflight.
And here's a view from our gantry near the Launch Complex 39A. So we've got another view of the convoy going by here. If I had to count up all the cameras we have all over the place for this, I'd be here all day.
That's a beautiful shot right there, looking at the Kennedy Space Center and Merritt Island and all of the nature around us. It's a big buffer from 39A so that we can be safe and launch our rockets off to space safely.
Absolutely, and a lot of people don't realize this is a national wildlife refuge. I mean, I pass turtles on the way to my car every day.
Well, when we would run from the operations and checkout building, we'd have to watch out for snakes and for alligators, and so to be really careful about the wildlife.
We used to have one who lived at 39A.
Oh, really?
Yeah, an alligator.
Well, maybe we'll see him. We'll keep an eye out. Tweet at us if you see any.
Did you name him Warren?
Oh. Ahead of my time.
I don't know how an alligator would feel about being called Warren. And we've got a ton of you following along on social media. Lynn says, as a fellow Missourian, we're so proud of Bob. Launch America, we will be watching from the Space Coast, cheering loud. And another comment, Godspeed and good luck, Astro Benkin and Astro Doug, hashtag Launch America. There you see the SpaceX horizontal integration facility. It's on the left of the screen now. We saw the front of it from the other angle. Or I'm sorry, no, there it is. I was getting my buildings mixed up, so it's on the right now. Bigger building.
The other's the Falcon Support Building. It's where all of our offices are, and yes, you're correct.
Thank you for the correction.
There's our hangar. We process Falcon Heavy in there. There are other boosters in that hangar as well. And the rocket and Dragon that is on the pad right now was put together, or rather finally integrated inside of that hangar and then rolled out to that pad to go up vertical.
And there it is. That shot really gives you a sense of the scale of the Falcon 9 rocket. Those Teslas look teeny, teeny, tiny, making their way up there. And so as they make their way up to the pad, we're going to throw it over now to Hawthorne, where Jesse and Dan are watching the action. Hi, guys.
Thanks, Marie. Yeah, really cool watching the Teslas pull up, driving on the launch pad just a few feet away from the vehicle. This is awesome and getting really excited over here. And with us looking at the launch pad right now, we've had to do a number of upgrades, but not only to the launch pad, but SpaceX has also made changes to both Falcon 9 and Dragon to enable flying crew. And a key update to this latest version of Dragon is its highly reliable launch escape system that is capable of carrying crew to safety at any point during the ascent of the rocket.
Another pretty key upgrade is the Dragon's new life support system. As you can imagine, flying humans requires keeping a habitable environment throughout the entire flight, and that means covering everything like providing breathing air, keeping the capsule at a safe pressure, keeping it free of contaminants, removing any carbon dioxide in the air, regulating the temperature, the humidity, all of these things, and also implementing that waste collection system, aka the toilet.
That sounds pretty important. The changes to Falcon 9 were small but extremely meaningful to meet NASA's requirements for safety for human spaceflight. And specifically, SpaceX had to prove a high degree of fault tolerance, meaning that small failures in the system would not lead to mission failure. Falcon 9 was already able to handle engine failure, but new emphasis was put on making sure that a failure throughout any phase of launch would not mean mission failure. And this goes all the way down to latches, control valves, electronics, wiring, and so much more.
All right, well, with the astronauts now on location at Pad 39A, we're going to swing it right back. Marie, Lauren, Leland, take us through the crew making their final steps towards the Dragon spacecraft.
Sure thing. So we are looking again at Launch Complex 39A. Just a few seconds ago, we saw the Tesla carrying Bob and Doug pull up to the launch pad. This is the site of so much history, you guys. This is where Apollo and Saturn V rockets that launched the moon took astronauts from. I mean, this pad has so much history. Leland, you launched from there. What's it like seeing Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 there with the pad? With all of the visual changes that have been made, I mean, what kind of emotions does this stir up in you?
You know, when we got out of our Astro van, we stepped out and we just looked up to see this vehicle, and it was creaking, it was groaning, it was making noises, it was getting ready for us to enter it, to take us off planet. And you know, you get a chance to take a picture. Sometimes you stand there, you look there, you think about all the training you've done, all the preparation, and again, all the people that have helped you get there. And it's just a solemn, amazing moment for all of us.
And there's another amazing drone shot. Lauren, you explained this a little bit earlier about kind of how SpaceX brings their rocket and capsule vertical.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we see it, can you kind of explain that again for folks who maybe missed that?
Yes, of course. Dragon is actually processed a few miles down the road at Area 59, or Dragonland as we like to call it. We then put it on a truck and drive it all the way to the hangar where the rocket is. And so what will happen is we'll then we call it break over, where the vehicle's up vertical, we'll turn it sideways because the rocket is being processed sideways or horizontal into the hangar, lift it, mate it to Falcon 9, and then roll up those hangar doors and essentially pull the vehicle in the transporter erector, which is the big white truss structure that you see there. All the fluid lines, electrical lines, and everything are connected to the vehicles via the TE, transporter erector. And they basically roll it up those rails. You can't really see them. You can kind of see them on the screen. Those rails roll the entire TE rocket Dragon assembly up to the very top of the pad, pin it into the pad systems, and then roll it up vertical.
and we are about T-minus 2 hours, 57 minutes, 44 seconds and counting. In just a couple of minutes, we are expecting to hear a formal announcement that the crew is at the pad. Of course, we saw them pull up in the Teslas, and there they are. Looks like they've already gotten out of the car, and they are walking up to the elevator that will carry them all the way up to the 255-foot level, and then they'll have a couple of steps to get up to the level where the crew access arm is.
I have the AC/DC song in my head as I see them walking up.
You know what I was kind of jamming out to on my way in was ZZ Top, Sharp Dressed Man.
Oh, nice.
I was like, I don't know, that might be on my playlist if I was in there. But there they are, taking in the sight, craning to see the top of the Falcon 9 rocket. It's 230 feet tall if you round up, and then Crew Dragon is another 27 feet from the bottom of the trunk to the top of the nose cone. So when you're out there in person, it's really hard to describe just how large it is.
Look at them getting excited. They're ready to get in the vehicle, get in the elevator, and make it to the top. There's some FOD he's picking up. Foreign object debris.
Appreciate that. They're also wearing FOD covers on their shoes, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We want to make sure that they don't, track the inside of Dragon when they go in, and so right before they enter the vehicle, they'll remove the FOD covers off of their boots.
You take for granted, all just the little details like that, all of the thought and preparation that has to go into literally every single piece of this operation.
I love the makeover of Pad 39A with the sleek black with the white ticking and the lines, and it's a very futuristic look for this iconic launch pad. And to think what's been there before with Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, shuttle, and now the SpaceX Crew Dragon getting ready for a launch to the International Space Station. Rocket fuel still going through my veins.
Honored to be able to launch from here. Oh, here they are. That's a really fast elevator.
Yeah.
I know, it really zips. It took them up 255 seconds.
They were moving their FOD covers.
Looks like they were just maybe checking something on his boot or leg.
And we should hear a call any moment and it's hard to tell from this angle, but there's actually a phone right here, and I can't tell if it's using a phone right now, but Leland, can you...
In this case, there's quite a few people, but just to have that last moment to talk to someone before you get in the view. It's a beautiful view.
And we're watching the crew when they're done using the phone there. We expect them to be making their way into the crew access arm. And coming up at about 2 hours and 35 minutes, the astronauts will ingress, or that's a word we use to describe climbing into Crew Dragon. And we saw Doug do it a couple minutes earlier, or a little bit ahead of schedule, so that time could be a little bit flexible. But that's going to happen with the assistance of the suit techs, and they will get strapped into their seats. But with that coming up, we're going to head over to Hawthorne for a preview of what's in store for the future in space travel. Jesse?
Thanks, Marie. Yeah, shortly after we begin to regularly fly NASA astronauts to and from the space station, SpaceX will also begin flying passengers to station and beyond using Dragon.
That's right. NASA is enabling up to 2 private astronaut missions to visit the station each year, just as part of our support of economy in low Earth orbit. It's one of the many ways NASA's working to just open up access to outer space for companies to manufacture products in microgravity, for any new couples in space, and really just to enable more people to be able to explore the stars firsthand.
And the more people out there exploring the stars, the closer come to becoming a multiplanetary species. Earlier, we showed you a first-hand look at where you would train if you were to fly with us on board Dragon, but now take a peek inside of the spacecraft itself.
intuitive to know what we need to do at any given moment in time. When I think about comfort for the astronauts, it's really every aspect of how you could interact with the spaceship. We have 3 different seat sizes. We even go so far as molding the foam around the astronaut's body so that there's not any pressure points, and it's just generally a pleasurable journey. Dragon is a spaceship that's all about safety and reliability. We designed it to be 2-fault tolerant, which means that any 2 things could fail. So a computer and a thruster, and I could still bring the crew back home safely. We also added a launch escape system. If anything goes wrong, the crew can get away from Falcon and get picked up safely. I've worked on Dragon since 2012. When I see Dragon lift off, I think I'm going to build up of emotion of 8 years of working with some of the best engineers and technicians across the country that put their heart in making this incredible moment happen for everybody.
And here's a live look at 2 astronauts about to climb right in. If you're just now tuning in, you're watching our coverage of the mission known Mission 2 or Demo-2. 2 days, SpaceX and NASA are going to be sending people into orbit on a mission to the International Space Station from U.S. soil since 2011. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are the NASA astronauts flying today, and you can see them right there on screen. They are just right next to their ride up to space.
Yeah, very exciting. So as you can see, they have already arrived at Pad 39A, where Falcon 9 will lift off from at 3 p.m. Eastern Time today. They have ascended the tall structure already, which is next to the rocket, and it's called the fixed service structure, and also have already corridor, which is known as the crew arm, which is what they're standing in right now.
That's right, and as they prepare to board Dragon, they have this one final stop they're standing in right now, the White Room. The White Room is literally just the room at the end of the crew arm that has an opening into Dragon. It is the last place on planet Earth Bob and Doug are going before they step into Dragon for their ride to the International Space Station.
And the term the White Room was first used during NASA Gemini missions, where the room right before entry was painted white. And as you can see, we've continued this tradition with painting ours white as well. And on Wednesday, they actually started a new tradition, the wall in the White Room. It's a fairly small area that has room for the crew and a few ground support members to complete cargo at T-minus 24 hours and crew ingress at T-minus 2 hours and 35 minutes, which is coming up here shortly. And ingress is how we refer to the crew boarding.
Also inside the White Room is a movable platform that just gets extended out to the capsule just to make that boarding process much smoother for the crew to climb into Dragon. You might expect it's also environmentally controlled. You can see kind of a big seal right up against the side hatch, and that's just done so Dragon can be open while keeping all the dust and the Florida humidity out of the capsule, making sure it's pristine for the crew. And so that seal is going to stay in place until they begin to retract it, get the arm ready to move out of the way. The hatch will already be closed.
And the White Room also has lots of tools in order to open the side hatch, complete crew ingress, and prepare for any contingencies that may be encountered.
And right now they're just in the White Room. They're getting a final briefing. You can see them with a number of different pad technicians. Everybody on that team has a job. Some are suit specialists who are going to help Bob and Doug get connected to their seats. Some are specialists with the Dragon capsule itself and are going to be responsible for closing the hatch. Also, you typically have a photographer in there just to help kind of capture these moments as the crew gets ready. So right now we're watching, and we can see them start to line up there. We'll see Doug Hurley go in first, and so he'll be the first one through the capsule. And he's going to be ingressing. That's just our spaceflight term for entering. You're going to hear these terms throughout the next couple of days as they make their way up to orbit, ingress, getting in, coming out. And they're also doing that final FOD check, making sure that the crew don't have any foreign object debris, dust, dirt, anything that could interfere with the systems on Dragon just before they get in.
Right, as Lee and Lauren were mentioning earlier, they do have stuff on their suits to protect from FOD, and they have FOD covers on their boots and as well as on their umbilical port on their suits. And that needs to be removed before they can ingress.
Minutes. The crew has arrived at the White Room and is in progress on schedule.
Just listening into hearing those updates live. Yes, once the FOD check is complete, they can enter, which is happening live on your screen right now. And as they climb into Dragon, they will buckle themselves in and attach their umbilicals to their suits. And as you can see, techs are there to help them get buckled and settled into those seats. Mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization. So the suits help keep them cool, as well as the trucks in case there is a suit depressurization.
As we go through this, we saw Doug Hurley go in first. He's there for this mission. He's closest to your screen. And then Bob Bankin's just next to him, and they're going to get some assistance from these suit techs as they get in. There are 4 seats in Dragon for these missions, and they are numbered 1 through 4 if you're looking from the perspective suit techs inside the hatch going from right to left. So Doug Hurley is in seat 2, that's the commander seat, and Bob Bankin is in seat 3, which for Crew Dragon's the pilot. And obviously we don't have anybody in seats 1 or 4 today. Crew Dragon is designed to carry 4 astronauts, though, on future NASA missions, and we'll see 1, which will have 3 NASA astronauts and 1 from our partner agency, JAXA. And then directly above the crew right now, but right in front of them, once their seats get rotated, are the 3 displays that they'll use flight. And that just gives them insight into all of Dragon's systems. It allows them to take control of the vehicle and manually fly it, which we'll see them do hopefully only during 2 manual flight tests. As again, Dragon's autonomous, but they can jump in and take if they need to.
And as Dan mentioned, the displays are above them right now, but those seats will rotate back for launch position so that they can easily access those. So coming up next, the crew will do a comm check once they're all settled in. And that's so that they can check to make sure that they can hear mission control, and then after that, their seats will be rotated to position. So let's check in with John Innsbrucker for the latest on the health of both of those vehicles. John, what's the status update today?
T-minus 2 hours, 43 minutes, and counting down for the launch of Falcon 9 with Dragon to the space station. As you see, the Dragon launch pad has obviously arrived at the pad. They got there shortly after T-minus 4 hours. Open up the side hatch on Dragon, got ready for the arrival of the astronauts. Saw the crew come up the elevators, walk over and enter Dragon, and they're now getting situated inside the capsule. Now, the flight team is monitoring data from Dragon. They most recently have completed a command and telemetry check of the radio frequency system on Dragon through the data relay satellite network. That looked to go well. There are no issues in work as we watch the astronauts getting situated in their seats inside the spacecraft. The Falcon 9 team is preparing for final checkouts and propellant load. Those checkouts are due to begin at T-minus 2 hours, some 42 minutes from when the launch crew officially gets on console in the firing room. All systems on Falcon 9 go. The range continues to be green on the support side. The areas around the pad obviously clear except for the folks doing the entry into the capsule. Airs are clear. We hear helicopter go by from time to time. The big concern is weather forecast. We are continuing right now at a 50% probability of the weather constraints. The big concerns are going to be the thick clouds, precipitation, possibility of lightning. I mentioned earlier, we get a strong sea breeze from the ocean that pushes inland and keeps the clouds from Central Florida from building up. But today the sea breeze is fairly weak, so the thunderstorms will get closer to the launch pad. We're also checking downrange conditions. If there's a contingency splashdown of Dragon, looking at essentially the wave heights, lightning, rain along the trajectory. Right now it's marginal, but it is still, we do expect that to improve slightly during the day. So fingers crossed there that the downrange weather looks good. But right now at T-minus hours 41 minutes as the clock continues to count down, all systems are go for launch.
All right, thanks, John. As we watch Bob and Doug get buckled into their seats, I'm joined once again by SpaceX's Jessica Jensen, just to kind of walk through everybody what made Dragon a 21st century craft. So first off, thanks for coming in today. I know you got to come in for a launch. That's always tough.
Of course.
Walk us through again kind of Dragon's life history. I mean, one in a clean room pretty soon right behind us. Walk us how we got to where we are today to have Bob and Doug climbing into that spacecraft.
Sure. So SpaceX founded to make life multiplanetary. That was why Elon started the company back in 2002. But also when he founded the company, we were a very small company, several years. And so we had to look for opportunities to, hey, how do you go from being a small company to actually putting people into orbit? So NASA came out with the need to fly cargo to and from the International Space Station. We jumped on it. Hey, first, not only is carrying cargo to and from the space station cool, I bet we could actually then fly people to the International Space Station. And hey, for 8 years now we've been flying cargo, and now we have transitioned over into flying crew and cargo together. So that's basically been the evolution of Dragon, and it's been awesome.
And I know when we see Falcon 9, get to talk a lot about reusability. Everyone is very familiar with the first stage coming back down and how cool that looks. Dragon is also designed with some reusability. In fact, you've flown Dragon multiple times, or you've flown Dragons multiple times to the space station. How does reusability factor into Dragon's life cycle?
So I'll actually talk a little bit about both, because one thing I think everyone always thinks about reusability and, hey, it saves money or that's great, but reusability actually improves your reliability. So when we get Falcons back and when we get Dragons back, either after one mission or multiple missions, we can do all these detailed inspections on them. And that's super important because when you fly a vehicle, you can only have so many sensors on it. You can't put a sensor, every single inch of a rocket or a spacecraft.
And there's already way more than anybody realizes.
Exactly. But so, especially for rockets that wind up in the ocean, some people don't have any idea of what they actually went through. So the fact that we're back, we were able to inspect literally every square inch of it and make small design changes that actually improve reliability for the whole fleet. So even though Bob and Doug are on a brand new rocket and a brand new spacecraft, those spacecraft are actually more reliable based on the knowledge we've learned from reusability.
We've walked people through a lot of the new systems on Dragon. What are just some of the cool things that are maybe beneath the surface that people don't know about with Dragon?
I think one of the coolest things is the autonomous docking system. And what that is it's basically we have, GPS sensors on Dragon, but they'll have cameras and imaging sensors such as a LiDAR on basically the nose cone or the front part of Dragon as it's approaching the space station. These sensors are feeding data back to our flight computer to say, hey, how far away am I from the space station? What's my relative velocity to the space station? And then that feeds into the computer, which has algorithms written by our engineers to say, okay, based on how far away rates, here's how you fire the thrusters to most effectively get to the docking target. And I think that's just super cool.
Well, I mean, we're all waiting for our cars to drive ourselves to work, and for Bob and Doug, that's exactly what it's doing for them.
Exactly. And what I think is so cool is the computer does this just like flawlessly. It's easy. When I tried to do it, I failed miserably. I tried to dock Dragon's S 3 times and I failed. 4th time I got it. And I will tell the public out there that on our website we actually have a Dragon ISS simulator, so you yourself fire the thrusters and see how well you do. Maybe I'm just a bad driver, but I think the flight computer does a really good job.
I think we all had fun with it. All right, well, we are just starting to hear. They're going to start up those comms with Bob and Doug.
CDR, PLT, comm check.
So let's listen in.
CDR, loud and clear. PLT, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear. Umbilical comm check complete. Stand by for ground station comm check.
And again, we're just listening in. They're doing in Hawthorne and the launch director out in Florida. And they're going to be doing this over Dragon to ground. And they're also going to be doing it over the countdown net. Those are the 2 main loops or nets that you're going to hear going out. And they're going to be doing it through their different communications paths. We heard them do through the tracking data and relay satellites. Those are those primary satellites that were going to be used to talk to Bob and Doug throughout their flight and to send commands to Dragon. They'll also do it through ground stations. SpaceX has a worldwide network of ground stations that they're able to communicate with the vehicle. And that's what we'll be using to get video inside the cabin of Bob and Doug on their flight up. So if you tuned in the other day, this is one of the first things that they do once they get inside the vehicle, and this is just to make sure all the communication systems with the Dragon spacecraft, with the suit, everything are working. They're able to talk to and hear everybody on the ground.
Dragon, SpaceX, ComCheck, ground stations.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear. Ground station ComCheck complete. Stand by for TJ's ComCheck.
And just a reminder, you're hearing the core. That's the crew operations responsible engineer. That's, if you've followed NASA missions at the Capcom position, that is pretty much the singular voice that's talking to the astronauts throughout their flight. And that's a position based here in Hawthorne, California. And you'll also hear
Dragon, SpaceX, ComCheck, TJ.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear. TJ's ComCheck complete. Stand by with MD and LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1. Check.
SpaceX Jason, loud and clear.
And cleared. Glad to have you guys on board. Stand by for ComCheck on Dragon aground. Dragon, MD, Dragon aground, ComCheck.
MD Dragon, loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for ComChecks with LD.
Dragon, launch director on countdown 1, ComCheck.
Good afternoon, Mike. Loud and clear.
I have you the same, and good afternoon. Stand by for my ComCheck on Dragon to ground. Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground, ComCheck.
SpaceX Dragon.
I have you the same. Back to core.
And Dragon, SpaceX, this concludes our launch configuration ComChecks. Ready for seat rotation per section 2 of 4.100.
Dragon will put that in work.
All right, so all those communications checks were done successfully, and you could even see, and it's so cool when we get these views right inside the cabin.
Dragon in 2.2, we are ready for seat rotation.
Copy. We will report when initiating.
Doug Hurley, using his right hand, he has the talk button built into the seat itself. So just, again, showing you all of the different systems, how the suit is integrated into all just one big circle for this whole spacecraft. So really cool to see those ComChecks live. Jessica, thank you so much for walking us the cool updates, the upgrades. Did you have any other cool stuff besides?
Let's see. So I don't know if you guys can see, but we have the Dragon clean room here. And one of the coolest, it is right on the main floor of our main building. So thousands of employees walk by here all the time and get to see Dragon in its final processing before it goes to the Cape. On when Crew 1 capsule was in here, it looked almost done. It looks a little empty right now, but that's because that capsule went off into our separate test facility for its final propulsion check. We do leak checks and things there, and we do that in a separate facility just because it's high pressure testing. And then the vehicle will come back here, get its final thermal put on, and then it will ship off to Cape Canaveral and get ready to launch 4 astronauts to the International Space Station.
I mean, what's it like to see it? Because when you see the first initial pressure vessel, it looks nothing like the final thing. So what's it like to just kind of watch it go through, and you just see little bits get added on, and then the next thing you know,
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so amazing. I'm so impressed. You know, when you look at a machine, you're like, how does this ever get built? How do people ever do this? And it really is just step by step time. Each piece has its critical function, and you get to watch that being built right in front of your eyes every day when you come to
Dragon,
work.
SpaceX, we
an
are ready
engineer, whatever
and
you do
initiating
here.
seat rotation.
Dragon copies.
And we just heard the seat rotation's about to begin. So, Jessica, thank you so much. Facts about Dragon for everyone to listen in on, and we can see the seats start to rotate now. Pretty soon, Bob and Doug will be in their launch configuration, and they'll be ready to go. The seats slowly start to rotate Again, they're in this down position just to make it easier to climb in and out of Dragon. They'll rotate to this launch position to put their backs a little bit more parallel ground. It makes taking the G-force a little bit easier for the crew on the way uphill, but most importantly, positions those touchscreens directly in front of them, which is just a Dragon.
Dragon SpaceX, seats are in the launch position.
We copy.
The seats are in the launch position. Let's go down now to Gary in Mission Control Houston, where I know the entire JSC team is standing by and ready to see Dragon take. Over to you, Gary.
Thanks, Dan. Very much so. Great to see good comm checks from Bob and Doug and that their seats have been rotated launch position. Here in Houston, Flight Director Zeb Scoville has pulled space station flight controllers, and all systems are go for launch from the space station side of things. The station is prepared for Dragon to arrive 19 hours after launch. Chris Cassidy has completed his preparations for Bob and Doug to arrive. To view some of the broadcasts, it even said they were, quote, looking sharp. Flight controllers here will monitor the countdown, but really it's up to the teams in Kennedy and Hawthorne to get us to liftoff at this point. So we want to hear your comments as we continue countdown to launch. So let's go to the social desk now. Tahira.
Thanks, Gary. So glad to hear that polls are go, at least on your end, and just hoping this weather just works out good for today's launch. I mean, people on the edge of their seats. We just checked numbers, and we're up to 1.1 million viewers right now. That's almost double when we checked last time. And right now, Columbia, South Carolina is leading the viewership, so interesting to see how that changes. Let's take a broader look at the conversation online with this heat map of states. Now, this shows Launch America mentions by state over the past week, and we have California leading right now with the most mentions, and I'm very silly thought the Space Coast would take it home, but let's see how this changes over the course of the broadcast. And with that, let's see what y'all are posting online right now. I mean, check out these outfits. Absolutely love it. Love to just see how people are making things creative for this launch and really making it their own personal touch on it. Let's take a look at another. Oh, we are back to the Launch America heat mentions, so let's see how that changes over the podcast. But really fun to see those photos online. Oh, we have another space pet, guys. These do not get old, so please use hashtag on social media. Right now, it looks like we have Catstronaut Boris, who is ready for his launch in the Crew Dragon capsule. I love seeing the pet for this mission, so like I said, definitely use that hashtag. We will be looking for it during the show. Marie, what's the latest at Kennedy?
Thanks to Hero, we are at T-minus 2 hours, 26 minutes, 40 and counting from liftoff of the Falcon 9 from the Kennedy Space Center here in Florida, carrying NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken. You see them right now aboard Crew Dragon spacecraft. It's been a very exciting day so far. The crew has been up since about 8 o'clock this morning as they prepare to head to the space station as part of this demo-2 mission for NASA.
And as we speak, the astronauts, as you saw, are inside Dragon and have completed their, so now they can communicate with the teams here on the ground. And their seats have rotated upright to their reclined launch positions, allowing them to see an access panel. And now they are about to, they initiate their own suit leak checks to make sure that their seat is in proper working condition before liftoff.
Just a little bit at about T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes. It could happen a little bit sooner, though. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule. We will see the closeout team be side hatch in preparation for flight, and that's going to be one of the key visual milestones on the timeline to liftoff. Now, we want to take you to a couple of guests we have joining us. They are with Daryl Nail at the OSB-2 viewing location, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, and also Center Director Bob Cabana is there with Daryl. Hi, Daryl.
Hi, Marie. That's right. We're in the fifth floor of the Operations and Support Building here at the Kennedy Space Center with a nice view of Launch Complex 39, and the two men that you mentioned are here to join me to answer a few questions. We're excited to have them both here, and they are, of course, Bob Cabana, the Director of the Kennedy Space Center, and Jim Bridenstine, Administrator for NASA. Gentlemen, thanks again for making the time to be here. The big story right now, Jim, is the weather. So let's talk a little bit about that. We can see there's some clouds building. That was forecast. You took part in a west morning. What do you know about the weather and the decision that was made to say, hey, let's give this another shot today?
Yeah, so what got us last time was the electricity here, and of course today there are in fact buildups. It doesn't look like there are thunderstorms at this time, but they are expected. The question is, when do those thunderstorms go? Thunderstorms materialize, where are they located? We are predicting about a 50-50 shot of going this time, but given the in late May in Florida, we have to take every shot we can get. So it's not likely that in a couple of days better than it is today. So we are a go for launch right now, and we are hoping that the weather will hold up. We almost made it on Wednesday, and the trend and it was on Wednesday. So we'll see.
And I saw a forecast that said the clearing is supposed to happen right around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So
that's right.
We're hoping that
launches at 3:22. At the earliest 3 o'clock, at the latest 3:30. So depending on when that happens, we'll either be go or no go. But again, every shot we've got.
Also watching the downrange weather for a
That's
potential rescue in case there were an abort.
That's right. So we have these staging areas. When we go from to the second stage, that's a higher risk evolution. We want to make sure that in the case we have to exercise the launch abort at that point, that the weather is good. And of course, that's of North Carolina. The big thing there is it's great that we have a launch abort capability. The challenge is that launch abort capability includes parachutes. And with parachutes, that you've got the weather to come down. If there are thunderstorms or downbursts or high winds, that's problematic for the parachute system.
Right, and sea states as well, bouncing on the ocean. Bob, of course, you're an astronaut. You know what it's like to hit the reset button and do it all over again. Get into the spacecraft to go, only to be told, no, we're not going to go today. We're going to try it again. What's that like? And then tell me about the mindset as you have to kind of reset. Feel less anxious? Do you feel more comfortable the second time around?
You know, Daryl, first off, my last flight, we counted down to 18 seconds and didn't go. Man, and when you get to you're ready. Yeah. The key is, it's the training that we go through. All the repetition that we do, we practice everything, including scrubs. And just because it didn't launch doesn't mean you don't have something to do. So you got to go through those back out procedures. It's all done. Then it was out of the vehicle and into the Astrovan, back to crew quarters. And we had a positive attitude. We got a good night's rest. And we went through it again. It's a matter of doing your job. And these guys are well prepared. It's all part of what we do.
Yeah, they stopped the count at 17 minutes, but you just a few seconds. That's a big difference.
And the truth is, the next night, actually everything went really better. The weather was bad the first time. I was kind of glad we scrubbed. And we scrubbed for an issue with the vehicle that they later sorted out. As it turned out, we wouldn't have had enough prop to run the Russian functional cargo block. But the next night, it was just a perfectly smooth launch count. Everything just went like clockwork and staged for an awesome mission.
I think you told the press before you walked out, I think you were over there at Astronaut Crew Quarter. I'm wondering where's the source of that confidence coming from?
I just got a feeling, you got to have a positive attitude. I watched a lot of weather down here supporting shuttle missions, and I'm hoping that those clouds over the I-95 corridor keeps them west of us, and that stuff that's building offshore is far enough off that we can stay in an open window here at the Cape.
Good. Well, we got your positive vibe. Appreciate that. Jim, when you were down in the astronaut crew quarters and you got a second chance to visit with the astronauts, kind of tell us about that and what was their demeanor, what was their mood today?
So again, they seem loose. They were loose this time. They're definitely ready to go. They're excited. They've been wanting to go for a long time now. I'll tell you one thing that I thought was a little interesting is, Bob Behnken was making fun of Doug Hurley because Doug's last flight, they scrubbed 5 times before launching on the 6th time. So Bob Behnken seems to think that Doug Hurley is the problem in this. To see them joking about that as they're getting suited up, ready to go. Yes, they're trained, they're ready, but they're also loose, and that's good to see because they're going to have to be on their game when we launch.
These guys are pretty impressive. Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken. I mean, Doug Hurley, an pilot. Bob Behnken, he's got a PhD in mechanical engineering.
Best engineer himself in the Air Force. Yeah.
Well, in your assessment, why are these guys the right stuff?
Well, this is a test flight, and we have great astronauts that are chemists. We have great astronauts that we have really talented and diverse, a very, very diverse astronaut corps in general. This is a test flight, and for a test flight, what do you want? You want test pilots. You want people that, for a living, they have made a living flying new things that have never been flown before. And Bob Benkin and Doug Hurley are the two people that in a test flight, and that's exactly what this is.
Bob, you're a pilot too. You want to weigh in on Doug Hurley? He seems like he's got the right mentality.
Hey, what
and
can
smooth
I say?
customer.
A naval aviator, a marine pilot, a test pilot. I'm all in. He's a great guy.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about in terms of the Kennedy Space Center, right? So you've been here since 2007, right?
2008.
2008, sorry, year. 2011, the Atlantis came to a wheel stop. I grew up here. My dad worked for NASA. My uncle was a contractor. When that happened, the next day, my uncle got the layoff notice, right? And it 30, 60 days. It was depressing. We're talking about thousands of people laid off.
Super depressing. Atlantis landed on a Thursday. On Friday, 2,000 contractors got pink slips and walked out the door. They worked on that vehicle. That was the best vehicle we ever flew, the cleanest. That's the dedication of the workforce here.
Right. So, and take me back to that time. You called it a depressing time. The fact that the shuttle program was something that the government completely had ownership of and paid for. Now we're moving into this commercial crew, which means making that transition. And tell me about that 9 years in which we made that move.
Well, obviously, everybody was really attached to the shuttle. I mean, for 30 years. It did an awesome job. The Hubble Space Telescope, all the satellites it deployed, building the International Space Station. But when I first got here, I told everybody, the shuttle program's going to end. We have to start preparing for our future. And nobody wanted to hear that. But how many times in your life do you get to define what your future to be? And we set out on this bold goal of trying to turn KSC into a multi-user spaceport, supporting both government and commercial operations. And a very persistent team. They worked extremely hard, and through a number of agreements, we were open. And this is the future. Commercial spaceflight, the administrator says it all the time. We want to establish a commercial environment in low Earth orbit so that we can focus on the hard job of exploring beyond our home planet, to establish that present system beyond planet Earth, establish a sustained presence on the moon, get to Mars, establish a presence there. We can't do that if we're locked here in low Earth. Commercial crew with both SpaceX and Boeing, that's the beginning of a whole new era of spaceflight.
All right, very good. Quick question. We've got, of course, the Space back today. The President of the United States plans on being here. Jim, you took him around the first time around. How did that go? I think I saw a picture on some space hardware.
That's right. So he took a look at the Orion crew capsule. Of course, the Orion for Artemis 1 is ready to go. And signed, a piece of hardware that will fly on the crew capsule for Artemis. So that's kind of, and not just him, but the First Lady and the Vice President and the Second Lady, they all signed it. So their names are going to fly around the moon on Artemis 2, which is exciting. But I just want to give Colonel Cabana here, because he did bring this spaceport through a very difficult time. And now it is a multi-use spaceport, and we do have commercial, and we have even international launches here, and now we're going to have commercial crew launches. Bob has done a wonderful job transforming this spaceport. That's why we're doing commercial. NASA wants to be one customer of many customers. We want to have numerous providers that are competing on cost, innovation, safety, driving down costs, increasing access. Even better today, when I took this job just a few short years ago, our budget at NASA was around $19 billion. The budget request that President gave us for next year is $25 billion. We are in a great position because the President is committed to space exploration. Of course, he's committed to force. We haven't had this much support for space since John F. Kennedy, and we've got bipartisan support. Everybody wants to see the Artemis program be successful. Everybody wants to see not just the next man, but the first woman on the moon, and that's what we're building here.
Yeah, it's key to it all is that bipartisan support, and of course, what the work that here, you can see the commercial activity all around this place. We're going to get to some questions on social media real quick that our audience find out. So the first question is from James on Twitter, and he asks, what is the hardest part of going to space? And we're going to have to give that question.
Well, Daryl, nothing's hard if you prepare for it. And what we are afraid of is stuff we don't have knowledge about. And that's what we do when we learn how to we train, okay? You spend a long time as an astronaut candidate learning. You spend a long time preparing for a mission. For an International Space Station mission, training around the world on all the different drills and everything, it's like 2.5 years of training before you get on orbit for that time to actually do your work. So I'd have to say the hardest part is the preparation, but you are so prepared when you go. You just have total confidence. You know that you are very well trained for what you're going to do. You have an outstanding team on the ground supporting you, and that is important to have that ground support as you climb into that vehicle. You know that they've done their very best to ensure your safety and a successful mission. But that is a piece of cake, except no simulator on Earth can prepare you for what those guys are going to feel. It's better than a cat shot off an aircraft carrier.
I believe it. Make it to try. The commercialization effort means we want everybody to be able to fly into space. That's the goal.
That's a great point about preparation, because that's not the highly visible part, and so it's good to know that all that preparation leads to that confidence. By the way, just an update operationally, they're getting ready to close the. You can see on your screen there, the workers there are getting closed and working on that right there with Doug Hurley and Bob Binken on the inside of Crew Dragon. Our next question is from Mathis on Twitter, and he asks, what kind of operations will the astronauts do between the liftoff and docking with the International Space Station? I know you pay a lot of attention, Jim, to the operations, especially of this mission. What do you know about that?
So there's a number of things. The first thing that they have to do is, of course, we've got a number of burns in phase with the International Space Station. We've got some boost burns as well. We're talking about, operating the rocket engine to get in alignment with the space station. But I'll tell you, the biggest thing that we need the astronauts to do once they get on before they dock is rest. We need them to eat, we need them to rest, we need them to be prepared for that docking. Once they are in the range of the space station, they're going to start maneuvering the spacecraft themselves. Not automatic, but they're going to do it themselves. They are in fact test pilots, and as test pilots they fly this vehicle to make sure that it operates as advertised. And of course then they will dock with the International Space Station, and a unique capability, automatic rendezvous and automatic docking. And so we're going to be able to see that for the first time as well.
That's going to be exciting to see. Thank you for sharing that with us. Jim Bridenstine, Director of NASA, Bob Cabana, Director of the Kennedy Space Center, thank you both for joining us. And we're going to send it back to Marie in the studio.
All right, thanks a lot, and Mr. Bridenstine and Mr. Cabana for joining us. You can see some clouds starting to gather over 39A. We're keeping a close eye on weather. Again, 50% chance of launching today. We just got to see what the weather's going to do. A little bit ago, we heard the crew complete their comm checks live on the air. We saw their seat that helps get them into a little bit more comfortable position for the G-forces during launch, and more importantly, it helps them be in a better position to interact with the screens in front of them. Completed their suit leak checks. We saw during the interview just a few minutes ago the hatch begin to close, and so inside the white room there, the pad is in there, still doing some work. That hatch closes. It's not as simple as a car door. There's a process to seal it and check it and make sure that everything is sealed properly. Right, Lauren?
Yeah, that's correct. If they haven't already started, one thing that will be coming up next is the leak check. What they'll do is they'll attach a piece of ground support equipment. They don't have it in their hands right now, so it looks like it hasn't started yet. You can see it there, the closeout member number 5. It's already attached to the side hatch mechanism, and what they'll do is essentially checking for the leak rate, and they'll hold pressure there for a few minutes and then track that change in pressure over time to within bounds, making sure that you don't have any issues with those O-rings there that are holding that pressure. And so once they complete that leak check, they will then do what is the called the installation of, or the final installation of the SPEP, or side pressure equalization plug. That's basically a plug. Once the capsule splashes down, what you'll do is actually remove that, and what it does is equalizes pressure across the hatch. So once that thing is plugged in, everything is super tight, and that you shouldn't have any leaks on orbit.
One of the other things that I think is pretty cool about Dragon, you can kind of see on the edges there are some of the windows. I know that Dragon started out as cargo. It was Cargo Dragon. You have your cargo version, and before you moved on to Dragon version, but you even had windows on the cargo version. Can you explain kind of why that was?
Yeah, the very first Cargo Dragon that we ever had, had a window over the hatch, over the side hatch, and the reason we did that is we always envisioned Dragon to ultimately be a crewed vehicle. So even in the beginning, for the very first vehicle we ever made, which didn't even really carry much cargo, we put that window there, and it symbolizes what Dragon's purpose has been all along. You know, taking those steps, starting off with the CRS program and resupplying the space station with experiments and food and crew provisions for the astronauts on board, to now putting putting NASA's astronauts in our own vehicle. Natural progression to what we were aiming for the whole time.
And Leland, what's your take on the touchscreen technology? We saw a little bit about that. Obviously, this is different kind of look than what we saw during the space shuttle.
You know, it's the future. I mean, we had our LCD displays, and we had lots of buttons to press, you know, valves and switches. And I think this new technology will allow us to get through procedures much faster, because we had no paper flight data file that we're having to turn to different pages and get to things. And I think this will be more efficient to go through your malfunctions and your procedures with the touch screens. And I think, you know, having the gloves, being able to, you know, touch the screens and work within the gloves, everything's kind of sleek and efficient. You know, there's not a lot of wires and things hanging off. And their knee boards, you can see their knee boards on their left knees. And so that's for some extra little notes and things.
The hatch is closed now.
There's some comment.
We are ready for the post-ingress briefing when you are ready to copy.
And we just heard confirmation on the loops that the hatch is closed. That is a little bit ahead of schedule.
We are motivated to go today.
We're ready. Go ahead.
Okay, on the weather, we still have some rain showers moving through the area. A reasonable opportunity today, so we are proceeding into the count. We are going to take a look at both pad and ascent track weather at T-minus 1 hour and 30, and the next decision point will be prior to prop load.
Copy.
And on the vehicle health front, both F9 and Dragon health remains nominal with no items of note.
So we just heard the weather is still iffy.
Good news. Thank you.
The weather is still iffy.
This concludes the post report when ready for comm checks with Falcon 9 operators.
We are ready for the F9 operators.
Copy. Expect that short.
So when we hear that chatter pick back up, we're going to quiet right down so that you can listen into that along. Just heard them discussing the weather briefly, still keeping an eye on that, but the next decision point is going to be before prop load. So we're going to press and then reevaluate before they start fueling the rocket. But in the meantime, it sounds like Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon are healthy, so the vehicle's in good shape. Like kind of a little bit of a repeat from Wednesday, that we're just keeping an eye on the weather at this point.
You can see on their left legs, well, in that preview.
In SpaceX comm checks with F9, you can expect it in about 1 to 2 minutes.
Dragon's ready.
All right, on their left legs there, they have these satchels that are strapped to their legs. Inside are some crew provisions, including that you see that they have displayed there.
You say, Lauren, those are tablets versus keyboards that you can write on?
Or the tablets are inside.
Oh, they're inside.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so when would they pull those tablets out to use?
During the mission,
Okay.
while on orbit.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's coming, if the background coming through over the air, but we hear the rain really picking up outside the studio here. So I'm kind of wondering if Bob and Doug are hearing the sounds of the rain clouds opening up over the pad. It's still kind of patchy out there, but again, we were following some thunderstorms that look like they may be making their way over here. It kind of looks from that view. It's a little bit hard to tell through the haze.
Launch is now just over 2 hours away. Tahira, you are there with the social teams now that the host and the rain's picking up and all kinds of exciting things are going on right now as we count down and get into the last 2 hours of the count. I bet things are getting pretty interesting on
Hey, Lauren. I mean, yes, they are. So many different things are going on right now, and I think people online are what's going to happen with today's mission. I have TweetDeck open right now, and it is just scrolling with the conversation of people around the nation talking about today's launch attempt. Just checked viewership, and we are now up to 1.4 million people watching this live broadcast, so really hope things look good with weather. And on that note, look up some of the things being said on Twitter right now. So it looks like, oh, we just have some more future astronauts. I really love seeing the young generation mobilized, getting excited about today's mission. Looks like we've also got some Godspeed and safe travels for both astronauts today. Them the best of luck on the second attempt. Hope it happens. Some throwback photos, all from people visiting NASA's centers, and also just let's do this. I love the attitude, and I just love seeing that people are still keeping the energy alive for today's launch. So there were obviously some disappointing reactions to Wednesday's scrub, but look at how people are getting excited for today's attempt. Let's roll.
Ready for takeoff. I'm ready to launch America. 3, 2, 1, go!
Ready for liftoff?
To infinity beyond!
I mean, how fun is that video? I think I will definitely have to attempt the worm after this, but just really glad to see and in good spirits leading into today's second launch attempt, and I really hope everybody will have something to. And with that, let's head back to Lauren. Lauren.
Thanks, Tahira. So it looks like people are pretty stoked about today's attempt. Please continue to join the conversation by using the hashtag LaunchAmerica across all the social media channels.
Yeah, I really love seeing the little kids get. My 3-year-old is super excited. She's got an astronaut sleeping bag and
Really?
she loves to climb in it. Yeah, it's the body of the bag is a spacesuit, and then the head is empty where the pillow is. So when she gets inside, she's got a spacesuit on. So she loves it.
That's the inspiration for that next generation of explorers going to Bob's place one day. And I think we have some people out there that are so interested in our conversation about the worm and the meatball that they've created something called the worm ball.
What?
So I was checking my email during that because I emailed you guys the worm ball, and I was like, what is this? I'm having a hard time seeing it, but what is the worm ball?
So it's which is, what it should be.
Yes.
Okay, look at
Okay,
it. There it is.
all right, thank you. I need a visual.
So they took the angular NASA logo and put in the side of the meatball. Can you live with that, Lauren?
You know what? That's a beautiful compromise. I'll take it. I'll take it.
It's a nice marriage of the two.
Oh, I love you, man.
Yeah, truth. And there's another live look at Launch Complex 39A, and we have had the opportunity to share with you a SpaceX Crew Dragon sitting on top of Falcon 9, a lot about the crew themselves and the significance of today as the official return, we hope, of human launch to American shores. But we would be remiss if we did not explain why this pad 39A is hallowed ground.
Where go, same height, where go. Altitude, velocity, light.
Many of NASA's storied missions began their daring journey from the exact same spot on Earth. Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. This massive structure of steel and concrete has cradled rockets, guided each on their fiery ascent to space for over 50 years. There can be no launch without a launch pad, and this hallowed ground has a history great any other. Having evolved and been reshaped for each new era of space, it's alive with a heartbeat as strong as the first. Launchpad 39A life under the direction of project engineer Harry May as NASA ramped up its efforts to achieve an unprecedented calling.
Why, some say the moon. Why choose this as our goal? They may well ask, why climb the highest mountain?
In 1962, Irving sculpted its massive pyramid base to a height of 40 feet. Then, concrete was poured to hold it in place. To launch the world's first moon rocket, engineers cut a flame trench nearly the length of the middle of the mound. It was then lined with heat-resistant bricks to deflect 7.5 million pounds of earth-rattling thrust, first felt on Apollo 8. Less than a year, Apollo 11 launched from Pad 39A. And hundreds of millions of people around the world watched as it landed on the moon 3 days later. Nearly a decade after this Apollo era, 39A entered stage with a new, one-of-a-kind spacecraft, the Space Shuttle. Millions of pounds of additional steel for surface structures to look, but not the purpose, human spaceflight. In all, 82 space shuttles from 39A until the very last.
Start. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0. And lift, final lift off of Atlantis. On the shoulders of the space shuttle, America will continue the dream.
Roll, Atlantis.
With the fleet retired, demolition crews removed the shuttle-era hardware to clear the way for NASA's monumental decision to lease this historic launch site to the private SpaceX. Today, its sleek and modern design supports a family of rockets that has advanced the age of American spaceflight. Now, 50 after it first sent humans to the moon, this historic spaceport stands ready for the next wave of human.
And we're live again at Pad 39A. We're looking at the pad closeout team. You can identify them by their numbers there, and we heard confirmation of the hatch being closed a few minutes ago. So again, things a little bit ahead of schedule. And when I say ahead of schedule, I don't mean the long, I just mean some of the specific milestones in the timeline. Those times are a little bit flexible, but that launch window remains instantaneous at 3:22 this afternoon. And Leland, you know, we just saw a piece about history of Pad 39A.
All stations, Chief Engineer on countdown 1 for comm check with the crew.
We're going to pause comm check.
Falcon 9, guidance, navigation, and control.
Dragon GNC on countdown 1.
GNC Dragon, we have you loud and clear.
GNC loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the propulsion engineer.
Dragon, prop on countdown 1, comm check.
Prop Dragon, loud and clear.
Prop loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the avionics engineer.
Dragon, avionics on countdown 1, comm check.
Avionics Dragon, loud and clear.
Avionics loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by ground segment engine.
Dragon, ground segment on countdown 1, comm check.
Ground segment Dragon, loud and clear.
Ground segment loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by launch control.
In launch control on countdown 1, comm check.
Launch control Dragon, loud and clear.
Launch control loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer. Dragon, chief engineer on countdown 1, comm check.
Chief engineer Dragon, we've got
Chief engineer, loud and clear. This completes the Falcon 9 responsible engineer comm check.
And we just saw a thumbs up from Doug Hurley. We listened to a series of comms checks there, and so everything.
Chief engine down.
Loud and clear on Dragon to ground.
Loud and clear. Well, good luck and layers up.
That sentiment is shared by all here.
Do it.
So Bob and Doug, along with the launch teams and all of the rest of America, hoping the rain clears up here. But as far as comms checks go, everything sounded pretty normal, pretty nominal there. So we're just waiting on the weather to clear up. But again, there's a live look at Launch Complex 39A, the site of 2 space shuttle missions where they began. And of course, Apollo, the first mission to the moon, Apollo 11 lifted off from 39A. And Leland, you were 5 years old when that happened. Take us back there.
Marie and Lauren, I was 5, and I was the antenna engineer during the broadcast. I was the kid standing behind the black and white Sylvania television holding the rabbit ears, and my dad said, move to the left, move to the right. And I was trying to look around the television going on, but they said, no, don't move, stay there. So I never actually saw the landing on the moon, Neil and Buzz walking on the moon. And the next day, all my friends in my community were like, yeah, you want to be an astronaut? We just had this momentous thing. And I said, no. I didn't see it. I want to be Arthur Ashe, because Arthur Ashe trained 5 blocks down the street from where I grew up. And my dad talked about his excellence, his perseverance, his wisdom. And so it wasn't until I got to NASA, working as an engineer at NASA Langley, that a friend of mine said, you'd be a great astronaut. And I just laughed at him. And I didn't feel that. But another friend of mine got in, Charlie Camarda. And I said, if he can become an astronaut, I can become one. So I applied the next year and I got in the 1998 class. About this, again, storied legacy, Pad 39A. I was there in 2008 and 2009, Space Shuttle Atlantis, the last one that came in with Doug and the crew. And it's just an amazing time to see this new era with Lauren, with your SpaceX Crew Dragon about to take off.
I never story.
I've got a million stories. A million stories.
Wow. And it's so cool that you do have a lot of these kids that are who have never seen a flight, a human space flight from KSC before, and this is their first time. And I'm trying to remember back. I grew up in the shuttle era, and I grew up in Los Angeles. I remember sometimes when the shuttle would land at Edwards Air Force Base, you'd hear those sonic booms, and you hear the double sonic booms in school, and we all just knew, oh, that's the space shuttle. It was just a thing. We just knew about that. And it did make me sad that there's our generation of kids who didn't grow up with that experience. And I'm just so proud that hopefully we get to provide that for kids and hopefully have more and more of these launches to the point where it becomes routine, hopefully never boring, but routine.
And there's talent in every zip code. So you have to make sure that every kid has the opportunity to do these types of things. If they believe in themselves, then we give them the right tools that they can use to STEM fields. And, we have a very diverse group of people up here working together to get Bob and Doug off safely. And I think more people that see this type of diversity will have a chance to say, I can do that too.
Yes. Absolutely. And we have a lot of kids watching today, and we have an opportunity to hear from another really awesome role model, especially for the little girls in the audience. So we want to throw it over to a very special astronaut standing by there. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Marie. I have the distinct pleasure joined by one of NASA's record-setting astronauts and a recent resident aboard the space station, Christina Cook. Christina, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you.
Christina, we're coming up on 20 years of continuous human presence on the International Space Station, and you were one of those humans. What's it like to see a milestone like this launch unfold after so much history already?
You're right, so much history indeed, and it's just been great to watch it all unfold. I think the exciting thing is how NASA is not only innovating in what we do, exploring the universe, pushing the boundaries, getting knowledge on the space station, bringing it back to Earth here, but in how we do it. We're innovating in the implementation of those goals and of our mission. And what that means is that bringing in the private sector, bringing in a commercial economy for low Earth orbit means space is going to be more accessible and more innovative. And it's just an awesome new era of history to be able to witness.
You hold the record for its single stay by a female astronaut in space. What's it like living aboard for so long?
Well, it is truly a privilege every single day. I have to say, full thing to look down on the Earth and to be able to kind of contribute to a space program that you yourself have held in such high regard your entire life. I would say that the biggest challenge for those longer times is remaining vigilant. The engineers make it so easy to live on board the space station. Sometimes you forget you're actually surrounded by such a hostile environment. Remaining vigilant both day to day to have that appreciation that you wake up with every day, and then also being vigilant knowing that things could take a turn for the worse at any time and you have to be ready. So it's a great privilege, but it also comes with great responsibility.
You came to NASA after the days of the shuttle program and you flew on the Russian. What does it mean to have this private capability to fly astronauts to the station?
Well, I think it's just a great innovation in terms of our partnerships. You know, it was individual countries pursuing space exploration. We brought in the international aspect of it, and now we're really folding in that commercial aspect, bringing the innovation, American industrial power, and recognizing that the more partnerships we have, the more accessible, the more innovative space exploration can be. So it's an awesome time, so much more capability into the program as well. So it's not only how we're doing it, but it's what it brings.
We're looking forward to having this transportation from. How does it help you do your job in space?
You know, I think one concept that we have in NASA for safety and to mitigate risk is called distancy. And here now we're bringing up a whole second way of getting crew to the International Space Station and getting cargo, last-minute cargo. So we're in clients we can do on board the space station by twofold. We're increasing how we can, our options for getting items up, stowage items, supplies, provision, experiments. So we're really just banking on the extra redundancy to make the program that much more robust.
We're watching Bob and Doug go through the process of preparing for this launch. What's going through your mind so close to liftoff?
Oh, it is such a great day indeed. You know, it's interesting because I think it's not so much what's mind, but what's not going through your mind. You know, you're not thinking about all the things could go wrong. You're thinking about enabling success by doing what you've been trained to do. One of the sayings we have is the astronauts are sometimes the most calm people in the room, and I found that to be true on my launch day too. I think it's kind of this career culmination of everything you've learned, everything you've dreamed of, that it's coming together in that day, and that you're going to finally do what you're prepared to do, execute the mission, and it just really brings a sense of calm and readiness.
NASA astronaut, always an honor to hear from you.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Well, once Bob and Doug arrive at the station, NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy will be ready on board. So in anticipation of their launch, he had this message for them.
Hello, everyone. Chris Cassidy, commander of Expedition 63 on board the International Space Station, flying 250 miles above the Earth. Like you, I'm excited about today's launch and the possibilities it will bring to America and to the world. But also, I'm very excited that two close friends will be arriving and joining the crew. I had the time with Doug Hurley on both of our first shuttle missions back in 2009. Together, we came to the International Space Station and helped construct the amazing facility that it is today. Although this will be my first mission with Bob, it was my honor to follow him as the chief of the office when he left back in 2015 to begin training for this. Personally, I've been very fortunate to fly in two different spacecraft. Launching from America on the shuttle, recently launching from Kazakhstan in the Soyuz. But I can't tell you how exciting it is to know that we're once again launching Americans from the coast of Florida. And finally, here's a story I'd like to share with you. Back in 1981, John Young and Bob Crippen launched on Space Shuttle Columbia, the very first space shuttle, marking the last time we flew Americans on a brand new vehicle.
434, Max Q-48. Roger.
With them, an American flag representing America's technical prowess.
Roger roll, Atlanta.
Years later, that same flag was flown to the International Space Station. This flag remains here today, waiting for Bob and Doug. Our flag means so many things to our country, and this small piece of America represents what we'll be able to achieve. We'll never stop exploring. And so Bob and Doug can take this very special flag home to Earth, where it awaits its next journey to. In a few years, the first Orion crew will take this flag with it around the moon. All of this starts today, looking outside the window, along with everyone else in America and around the world. I can't wait to look out the window and see my friends on close approach. Falcon 9, go Dragon, and go Bob and Doug. I'll see you soon.
There again is a live look at Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where we are T-minus 1 hour, 41 minutes, 58 seconds from liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket carrying Crew Dragon with astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley strapped inside. We can see some raindrop there. It looks like rain coming down at the pad, but we're still monitoring weather, and it sounds like there's going to be another decision point before they start fueling the rocket, which is scheduled to happen at about T-minus 35 minutes. So we just heard a little bit about where they're headed. If the weather cooperates today, to the International Space Station. Leland, you've been there twice, and I know just from what you've told us, it's this leviathan in space and the site of so much work and partnerships happening.
Right. Chris Cassidy is up there floating in the Columbus laboratory that I installed, or our team of us installed 122. And I think about, using this robotic arm that was made in Canada. The European Space Agency built the Columbus laboratory, and my job was to arm and attach it to the International Space Station. And as it was getting closer and closer, the motion just stopped. And I'm like, what is going on? And there are 4 ready-to-launch that have a very slight spring force that I was moving so slowly with the hand controller, the translational hand controller, that spring force stalled. And Peggy Whitson was behind me, and she said, Leland, there's some commentary. Weather update, I think.
Go ahead, Jay.
Hey, Doug. We're still waiting for a weather update expected at 18 Zulu. Therefore, the next will be closer to the propellant load time. We are currently no-go on launch weather, but we are showing an expected clear of 1830 Zulu.
Okay, copy all. Thanks for the update.
So we just heard if they were to launch right now, the weather would be no-go. However, it sounds like there may be an opportunity if the weather clears, as expect it may. So again, we're gonna keep listening as we continue talking. If we start to hear any kind of chatter, especially if it's about the weather, we're gonna do our best to quiet down so that we don't, and everyone can hear it along with us. But Leland, you were just talking about the work on station, and Peggy Whitson was getting ready to tell you something.
Well, the laboratory is stalled out. It's about to be attached, and there were 10,000 people waiting. Their job security depended on me installing this thing properly.
Right.
And Peggy said, Leland, just a little bit harder on the hand controller, and all 4 ready-to-latch indicators went green. And I was like, yes! And that was our primary mission objective. That paled in comparison to what happened next. Peggy invited us over to dinner in the Russian segment, and we had this meal with people from all over the world, Russian, French, African American, Asian American. This diversity that we talked about earlier, were up there breaking bread at 17,500 miles per hour while listening to Smooth Operator. It blew my mind. It was Smooth Operator, right?
What an appropriate song for this
I know.
job, too.
Wow, does she know? She knows now.
Yeah. And Dan Tani actually changed the song from Smooth Operator to Arm Operator. So you see Arm Operator.
I love it. Love it. And Leland, we were in another taped segment when you got a text from Drew Foystel. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, Drew Foystel, his good friend, just sent me a text saying that the families say hello to all who are watching and thank the nation and the world for their support and interest. And Chris Ferguson he was the commander on STS-135 and one of my classmates from the 1998 class, and he says, way to go, Godspeed on Crew Dragon.
That's awesome to hear those words of support. Thank you guys for watching, and everybody following along at home. I mean, the COVID-19 situation has been just a thing for people stuck inside, homeschooling their kids, still trying to do their jobs, and so it's really cool to be able to watch this happening. And we see the pad. Looks like they are getting ready, or they've left the white room and they've already come down the crew access arm, so they are getting ready to leave the pad now. And we are going to go now to the Operations and Support Building 2, where is standing by with NASA's Chief of Staff to talk to us a little bit about some of NASA's ambitions beyond the International Space Station and its work with the Commercial Crew Program.
That's right. We're here in the mission briefing room at the top of Operations and Support Building here, where there's a lot of important people that are gathering to watch the launch here. And one of those people, it's not the way, one of those people that is important is Gabe Sherman, NASA's Chief of Staff. We appreciate you being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Daryl.
You got kind of the insight of what's coming down the pike here. So of course today is Commercial Crew, and we're focused on that and seeding the commercial market. But what's off in the horizon for NASA?
Well, I'll just tell you, it's an incredibly exciting time, and you know this. I mean, you're here every day. But whenever you think about what we're doing with Commercial Crew, in the horizon in July, we're launching Mars Perseverance, which is just going to be an incredible thing for us. You look at the end of this year, SLS, the largest rocket in the world, is going through testing right now, going through green run testing, and maybe by the end of the year we could even get it right out here to the Cape, which would be just an incredible achievement for our team. So there is no shortage of things to be excited about at NASA.
It feels like everything is really starting to happen here recently with everything that you just mentioned, and if we get that first Artemis launch, that could be right around the corner as well.
Oh man, we're looking at 2021 is what we're looking for, and so you think about SLS potentially moving from the green run to the Cape. You've got Orion finishing up its last. It moved from Plumbrook earlier this year, our station up there in Ohio, down to KSC. So we're looking at checking it out throughout next year, and hopefully we'll have the first flight of SLS and Orion at the end of 2021. And I'm telling you, that is going to be a moment.
That will be exciting.
Yeah.
And there will be a thunderous boom right here at the
Yes.
Kennedy Space Center. With Mars as the end goal, how does all of this get to that end point?
You bet. No, and I think that's what's so important about the Artemis program, right? Our long-term vision, get to Mars. But when you think about Artemis, everything that we're doing at the moon is helping us learn, prove out capabilities and technologies, work through the right missions, understand how we utilize the resources of the moon potentially to go further onto Mars, so the technology, the science, the exploration, architecture that we're pushing, every piece of it is helping us learn a little bit more, prove out a little bit more, so we can take that next giant leap to Mars. And so everything that we're doing at the moon helps prepare us to Mars.
How about the activity in low Earth orbit, like Commercial Crew, which is happening today? How does that help us for missions to the moon?
Yeah. Every time you're launching humans, you're learning, right? And you're taking what you've learned and you're moving it forward to the next mission. But I think it's really about the business case. If you think about what Commercial Crew, it's NASA moving from owning and operating hardware to buying a service, right? And if you remember, just a few weeks ago, we awarded 3 contracts on the system to commercial companies. And so we're hoping that we move to a day where we're actually buying a service to get our astronauts back and forth to the moon. So actually the commercial market to go from low Earth orbit all the way out to lunar orbit. And so Commercial Crew is a great proving ground for that, helps us prove out those partnerships, and then we get a feed forward to the moon. So it means a lot. This means a lot as we move out.
And it's really exciting when you talk about the Commercial Crew, commercial aspect going to the moon. Right. And those partners. They're going to be studying those landers to see if they are viable for NASA?
Yeah, working through this process of with the commercial providers and NASA engineers going through initial designs right now, looking at the capabilities that they've proposed, and then trying to make decisions on which landing system goes early in 2024, which landing systems are better prepared for sustainability out in the later 20s, an ongoing process throughout this year and moving into next. So it's going to be really exciting to kind of see what comes out as, hey, this is the lander that's going to take the first woman and the next man to 24.
Right, so different than the time of Apollo when we went to the moon, and that program ultimately came to an end. The idea here, though, is to create some sustainability. Talk about that.
Right, and sustainability, you can get to sustainability if you have reusability, right? And that's what we're seeing with Commercial Crew for sure. Whenever you think about our human landing system, you're looking at a system that we put out there at the moon, sustainability, and it's going back and forth, taking multiple trips to the lunar surface, back up to Gateway, which you're familiar with, is kind of our smaller space station we're going to put in orbit around the moon. So we are building an architecture that is going to usability at the moon. Apollo never had that. And so whenever you think about driving down cost and access, reusability, sustainability are critical.
So you get to see everything from a very high level at NASA. What's it like for you personally, I'm curious, to be here at the Kennedy Space Center to watch a launch and to just see the facility where all of this activity happens?
Yeah, I think sometimes people think since I work at NASA, I'm around this stuff all the time. I'm not, right? I don't get to come down here nearly as often as I'd like. Just as exciting for me as it is for anybody else in this room. When you think about all the hard work that our team has put in to get us to this day, to actually come down and be a part of it with them, it's just overwhelming and incredible. So we're just a little bit excited.
All right, Gabe Sherman, NASA's Chief of Staff, we appreciate you joining us today and enjoy the launch. I certainly know you will if we're able to get that one off. We're going to toss this back now to Hawthorne.
Joining us now is SpaceX's Lars Blackmore to discuss SpaceX's future ambitions to visit the moon. Thanks for joining us again today for a second round.
You're welcome.
Could you tell us just a little bit about your background and what you do here at SpaceX?
Yeah, we're in charge of entry and landing for Starship, which is SpaceX's next rocket after Falcon 9. And before that, I worked for many years on the same thing for Falcon. So hopefully today you'll see another one of those landings on a drone ship.
Awesome. And speaking of that, what role does reusability play in getting people to the moon and Mars in the future?
Well, it's really all about making human space flight affordable. And what you want for that is a 100% usable rocket. Now, Falcon is only partially reusable, but Starship is going to be 100% reusable. And we've actually already started working with NASA Starship to send astronauts to the surface of the moon for the first time since 1972. Not only that, Starship will be refuelable on orbit. Each of those two things will let us send people basically anywhere in the solar system with more payload for less money than I think people have really been contemplating. For the first time, we can seriously talk about things like lunar bases, or what SpaceX cares about most, a self-sustaining civilization on Mars.
So what you're saying is I will have an opportunity soon to get on board one of those spaceships.
I very much hope so. Yeah.
So speaking of reusability and landing, I know you mentioned Starship will be refuelable in orbit, but Falcon does come back and land back on Earth. What are the challenges actually landing on the moon and landing on a planet like Mars?
Yeah, well, you can't land like a plane because the moon and the Mars either have no atmosphere or have a very thin atmosphere, and even if you could, there's no runway that someone's built for you. So that's one of the reasons that we do propulse Falcon, because we want to figure out how to do propulsive landing. That fundamental architecture works on basically any planet. If you have no atmosphere like the moon, you propulsive landing burn all the way. If you have a thick atmosphere like Earth, you let the atmosphere slow you down as you float down, then do a short landing burn at the end. And for Mars, which has a very thin one, you do something in between the two.
Wow, yeah, that sounds really difficult, and I'm sure there's been a lot of effort put into that. Can you tell us anything about what we're working on now to get us to a point where we can do a landing like that in such a harsh environment?
So figuring out propulsive landing is really the key part of it, but what people may not realize is that every time we bring Falcon back, we do something called an entry before we hit the atmosphere. We light the engines to slow the rocket down. That happens high up where the air is very thin, and it just so happens that the conditions are very similar to what a Mars landing burn would look like. So even though it takes months to get to Mars, and you can only do it every 2 years when the planets, we effectively get to practice Mars propulsive landing every time we bring Falcon back, including hopefully today.
Wow. And as you mentioned, Falcon back, we learned something new. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we learn after the vehicle has returned and we're able to check out the vehicle?
Yeah, so Jessica actually mentioned this earlier, that I talked about how cost is really one benefit of reusability, but reliability is the other benefit. Imagine that you do all this planning to send a rocket up through the rigors of launch and re-entry, but you don't get to see the rocket afterwards. What we would like to do with reusability, what we've been able to do with Falcon 9, is see the rocket, inspect it, and because of that, we've been able to correlate our models to what actually happens when you launch, re-enter, and land a rocket.
Right, instead of just guessing what happened to the vehicle after it's left.
Exactly.
Well, thank you again for joining us today for a second round. Hopefully the weather works with us today in a couple hours, actually. Let's throw it back to Kate Marie.
All right, actually, we have Lauren here. Now, today's mission opens up the door to one day the general public to be able to visit places like the moon and Mars. And as you've heard through several interviews today, reusability is a real important part of that. Imagine if every time you flew a plane from LA to New York, you threw it away at the end of the flight. That would mean line travel would be too expensive, costing hundreds of millions of dollars a flight, and almost no one would be able to fly. And so that's what SpaceX is trying to do here with reuse, allow not just a handful of people to be able to go to space, but tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of regular folks like you and me to be able to. So, you know, myself, you know, when people like me have a chance to go, I know my dream is to land on Jupiter's moon, Europa. Scientists believe that there is a liquid water ocean underneath the ice and that it has the potential to be habitable. And so I'm super excited to get up close, maybe some space fish. Leland, what about you? Where would you go?
Wow, that's a pretty interesting destination. I think I would like to go to Mars. We've Mars so much and looked at it, and I think maybe having a Martian base that is dog friendly, you know, bring the pups along, because I think as we explore our families, our cultures, our traditions, you know, with us, and you know, flying with Doug and Bob is cool, but you know, having more people, See, the puppers, taking the puppers to space. I mean, you know, they're not.
They look ready to go.
They are ready to go. We just needed maybe some like SpaceX type suits for them. Yeah, but it's that's what it's all about, exploration. Like the settlers going the west, you know, they took everything with them and they started these new communities and these new traditions. And I think that's what we do with space travel. We start new traditions and communities and bring everyone together as one family, one civilization.
We're here for it. And knowing that the opportunity to fly to space as a private citizen is really just right around the corner, we have a new poll question on Twitter for you. If getting to fly to the moon, now we're talking the moon, would you fly to the South Pole where no one has ever been, or would you go to the Apollo 11 landing site? Those are going to be some interesting answers.
And while there is not a ton of cargo on today's mission, Dragon is carrying two very special payloads, of course. The first of those payloads is a series of custom art pieces entitled Humankind by Los Angeles artist Tristan. These indestructible double-sided paintings made from gold, brass, and aluminum celebrate how far humanity has come, as well as still have to go. It includes a beautiful homage to the Saturn V rocket, as well as a nod to Bob and Doug's current ride to space. And you can find more images and information about these pieces on SpaceX's social channels. Next, in the spirit of inspiring the next generation of explorers, we wanted to celebrate the class of 2020, from kindergarten all the way to graduate school. NASA invited students from around the world to submit their photo to fly on America's first human spaceflight in nearly a decade. Each graduate's photo was a mosaic image of our beautiful planet Earth, which we printed, and it's now being flown aboard Bob and Doug's flight on the Crew Dragon spacecraft. We received nearly 100,000 photos. That's a ton, so thank you, and congratulations, graduates.
Yeah, I've got a couple of family members and friends who so they're super excited about seeing their faces go to space in that beautiful mosaic. That was really cool.
And again, that's what it's all about, you know, everyone coming together with instances and bringing them forward to space. And I think regular people flying to space, I mean, SpaceX is going to be flying government people, non-military people, but people that have a desire to explore and do new things and traditions off planet, as we say sometimes.
All this time since we've had the International Space Station, it's been government astronauts performing the research because you're the only ones we've been able to send, right? But
we've had some people that paid their way on a Soyuz rocket.
To go.
But it's really the billionaire boys club. You know, that's what Pharrell talks about with, you know, it costs so much money to go to space, and I think that price point will come down as we make this more amenable for everyday people.
Absolutely.
And then eventually being able to fly artists and musicians and poets, people who can tell the story, what they've seen out there in a way that really connects to the soul of people down on Earth, so they feel inspired.
Exactly.
Now, following today's mission, we will be one step closer to a future where we can all have that opportunity to gain the orbital perspective worlds. In just over an hour from now, Bob and Doug will be the first people to launch on an American vehicle in almost a decade. And for the space, I can try to speak for all of us, which is impossible, but I will say it has been an absolute honor to have the opportunity today to have this stage to what we've poured our hearts into over the years with our partners at NASA. And it's just deeply humbling to know that the agency and that Bob and Doug have entrusted us with the responsibility that's on our shoulders is huge, and we're just so grateful to be here today.
Absolutely, and I know that our NASA teams really share it. We heard from just a handful of them earlier when Bob and Doug were riding out to the launch pad. But there's so many people that we're probably never hear from on the public stage, but that have poured their hearts and souls, as you said, into this mission. All the engineers up late hours, triple checking everything to troubleshoot and solve problems and get us to this point. So it's just really awesome that we've made it to this point.
About legacy, Katherine Johnson, who helped get John Glenn to space, her daughters are watching right now. And that, again, that legacy going forward to space travel is powerful.
Wow.
And we heard from two icons of science and exploration on Wednesday, and we couldn't resist shout-outs with you one more time.
Wow, we're making history again. The NASA program. I am there with your spirit, Bob, Doug, good luck. I know you'll be fine. I'll be watching and got everything crossed, arms, legs. I'm not. Can't wait for you to get back safely.
This is the first time a U.S.-built rocket has taken people into 9 years. It's quite an accomplishment. So for us at the Planetary Society, more rockets means more exploration. More people in space means more exploration. More countries involved in the endeavor of spaceflight means more exploration. This is how we know the cosmos and our place within it. Congratulations, SpaceX. Here's wishing your team, and the crew especially, a safe journey and the joy of discovery. Let's go.
So great to hear from William Shatner and Bill Nye, two very recognizable faces following along on the mission. And we want to go over to Dan and Jesse in Hawthorne, where we are now just 1 hour and 18 minutes from launch. Dan, Jesse?
Hey, thanks, Marie. Yeah, 1 hour, 18 minutes. I think we're tying ourselves in knots, just like Captain Kirk. We're really hoping the weather cooperates in about 20 minutes or here, so we're getting hopeful. We're getting our hopes up.
Yes. Very excited. Again, we're T-minus 1 hour and 18 minutes from launch, and the anticipation is real over here. Since arriving at the spacecraft, Bob and Doug were helped by our closeout engineers to get into their suits to special umbilicals that provide breathing air, pressurized nitrox, and a communications link to Dragon systems. They conducted leak checks, and communications checks with the Corps here in Hawthorne, which is the person who will speak to them directly throughout the mission, as well as the launch director in Florida. They're checking their comm path through both ground stations and the tracking and data relay satellites that we'll use to talk to the crew the entire way to the station.
And as suit leak checks were successful, the closeout team was able to get out of the Dragon capsule and seal up that hatch, which also got its own leak check and was confirmed successful. The closeout team is out of the pad. They're away from the BDA, the blast danger area, and weather operators are about to kick off their final checks on wind speeds at the pad, which are going to be go, no go for launch. So we're all keeping eyes on the weather right now. Before we get to that final go, no go, all the various teams at both NASA and SpaceX are going to go polls, just making sure conditions are right with Falcon 9, the Dragon, the crew, the range, and the space station before the final go is given. Back in with the man over in Houston, Gary, for a status and the team supporting the space station for their readiness for launch.
Thanks, Dan. The team here in Mission Control Houston remains go for launch. We're also that weather. All systems on board the station that are required to be healthy for this mission are continuing to look good. Chris Cassidy is wrapping up his workday and will be launch here in just under an hour. So station power and communication systems are normal. Computers and networks used for Dragon's approach have been checked out, and the cabins and the station cabin's atmosphere and pressure are as expected and ready to welcome 2 new crew members aboard. Control will be closely monitoring Bob and Doug's flight and checking off milestones for most of the flight, and this very same team will be coming back tomorrow to be ready in the range of the International Space Station, and we begin integrated operations and prepare for Dragon's docking. So I'll send it back. International Space Station team here is ready. Go Falcon 9, go Dragon, and Godspeed to Bob and Doug.
All right, thanks, Gary. If us now joining us, you picked a really good time. We're just a little over an hour to launch. And welcome to our coverage for the mission known as Demonstration Mission 2, or Demo-2. Liftoff time still holding for 3:22 p.m. Eastern. Tracking no issues with Falcon 9 or Dragon. Everything good with the range so far. We're keeping an eye on that weather. Over the last 3 hours, our crew members, Doug Hurley and Bob Benkin, donned their SpaceX suits in the historic crew quarters suit-up room. They walked out of crew quarters just as every astronaut to fly from space from this port has done since Apollo 7. And then they were transported over to the pad where the crew members entered the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft that we're looking in live.
Today is a historic launch. It will be the first time a commercially built will launch people into orbit and the first time the U.S. has sent people to the space station from American soil since 2011 with the retirement of the program. Over the next hour, we will conduct a series of polls to get ready for launch, have Bob and Doug arm the launch escape system, and begin fueling. Launch is set for 3:22 p.m. Eastern. This will include a 12-minute flight to orbit and then a 19-hour flight to dock with the interstation tomorrow morning.
Today's mission is the culmination of years of work between teams at SpaceX and NASA. Demo-2's flight tests starting with this launch today, going on to dock with the space station tomorrow, and then splashing down at the end of their mission. And this is going to be the final test to certify SpaceX for regular crew flights to the space station.
We've been hearing a little bit from the crew on board Dragon, which you can see on your right screen. They are currently in their seats and already through communications and leak checks. They're able to follow all the milestones still ahead on those display panels just above them into all Dragon and Falcon 9 systems as we proceed towards launch. So at T-minus 1 hour and 13 minutes, let's check in with John I for a status update on the vehicles. What's the update, John?
Thanks, Jesse. Well, not much to add to what Dan and Jesse just brought up. We've had a smooth countdown this afternoon. SpaceX team is working no issues as the pace begins to pick up here in the last 70 minutes. On Falcon 9, we did get the team on console. Earlier, you heard the comm checks between the responsible engineers and the crew. Engineers will be making calls on ascent for the crew's benefit, so they want to make sure that they could hear them before we go. The propulsion checkouts of the first and second stage are beginning right now. We're watching them begin to go through the process, opening valves. That check will go for about another 10 minutes, and that'll be our last one until propellant loading. Now the team will assess readiness for launch with a final go, no-go poll at T-minus 45 minutes. That'll be followed by propellant loading starting at T-minus 35 minutes. Now earlier today, Dragon operators also performed a series of checkouts of Dragon's flight. The spacecraft is also currently go for launch. Our NASA crew, astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Benkin, are currently inside Dragon. The hatch is closed. SpaceX ground crew has left the tower. The next major event for Dragon is retract to the crew access arm that you can see currently alongside the capsule, somewhere between T-minus 45 and T-minus 42 minutes. Now the range is currently clear for launch from historic Pad 39A. The worldwide network of ground stations and the tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support Dragon as it heads into orbit. The weather, that's the one concern. We'll get a weather brief at T-minus 1 hour, so just under 12 minutes from now. Currently, the ground and upper altitude winds are go, so that's one thing that we can check as green. At the current time, we did have some rain earlier that appears to have let up, but we are red on for both the electric field at surface levels, lightning, and cumulus clouds. There is a expectation that a coming up at about T-minus 1 hour also may give us clearance of those conditions. So everything is focused on the weather brief at T-minus 1 hours. Also, we should hope to hear about the final check on the ascent corridor. That's the weather along the Atlantic seaboard in case Dragon had to abort on the way to space. The conditions there have been marginal, but the expectation that it would be good for launch. But all of that coming up here very shortly prior to entering propellant load. Now today we are aiming for a launch at 3:22:45 p.m. Daylight saving time, or 19 hours, 22 minutes, 45 seconds universal time. Once we begin loading propellant, there's no opportunity to churro. So once propellant is loading, we're committed, and we'll get one chance at it today. But currently at T-minus 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 30 seconds, everything is go for launch.
Thanks, John, for that detailed update. We've got an extensive history now of flying from the Florida coast, and just last year completed a test run of the mission. We're less than an hour from beginning here today.
The purpose of that mission was to its capability to safely and reliably fly to and from the International Space Station. The success of Demo-1 was a really exciting moment,
Falcon
paved the
9,
way
Falcon
to where we are today. And right now we're getting ready to fly U.S. astronauts from U.S. soil for the first time since 2011.
And 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we refer to as flight heritage. As I mentioned earlier, SpaceX has successfully completed 21 to and from orbit since 2010, including 20 trips to the International Space Station. Not only have we conducted thousands of hours of testing, enhanced and added a number of safety features to Dragon.
Much of what was learned with the Cargo Dragon was leveraged in the design of this new vehicle. It's fully, which means it can basically fly itself, but also features that full manual override capability just in case of emergency.
And many of the other enhancements SpaceX's goal of reusability and less refurbishment time between missions. So let's take a closer look at these advancements.
Standing at almost 20 feet tall from the very bottom of the trunk to the very top of the nose cone, Crew Dragon's comprised of two main elements. You have the capsule, which is designed to hold crew and pro, and then you have the trunk, which holds unpressurized cargo as well as having a solar array and radiator.
And the nose cone at the top of the capsule protects the docking system as well as the guidance navigation control system, or what's called GNC. The nose cone opens for docking and remains attached to the Crew Dragon space, unlike the previous version of Dragon, and that helps towards our reusability efforts.
Completely opposite the nose cone is that trunk. It has attachment points for the Dragon capsule, and it can hold cargo. On the very outside of the trunk, one half of it contains a radiator that rejects heat from the active thermal control system into space. That's the white part, and that uses SpaceX's new picotiling technology. The other half contains the solar cells used to charge the spacecraft's batteries.
We only have 2 astronauts on board today. The spacecraft is actually designed to accommodate up to 7 crew members with modular seats that can be removed and replaced by additional cargo. The seats are made of carbon fiber and are custom sized for any crew member flying on board.
The control panel centered right between the pilot and the commander seats and has those 3 touchscreen displays that gives the crew insight into Dragon and even the ability to operate the vehicle and fly it manually.
And finally, our Super Draco launch escape system is a key safety feature of Crew Dragon, giving the crew the ability to safely escape from the time of launch all the way to orbit.
Look to the future beyond this test flight. Later this year, the first operational crewed mission for NASA will take place. NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins.
To review your launch commit criteria and indicate readiness at the appropriate time. Step 5469 for propellant load and launch.
That's a good sign. That was the launch director. We're getting ready to pull the teams as we move towards that go, no go for propellant loading, which happens at about 4 launch. But back to our Crew 1 mission, NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Shanna Walker, and Suichi Noguchi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency were chosen to support this mission. Again, it's called Crew 1.
But today, Doug Hurley is the spacecraft commander for this mission. He previously flew on 2 space shuttle missions as the pilot on STS-127 and STS-135, which was the final space shuttle flight. Here's a closer look at Doug Hurley.
Excited?
Very excited. Yeah, very excited.
You feel ready? Still pumped?
Oh yeah, I think we're ready. We're certainly ready.
Joining the SpaceX Demo-2 test. He is a Marine Corps colonel and test pilot. He was selected as an astronaut in 2000. He piloted Space Shuttle Endeavour and Atlantis for STS-135, the final space shuttle mission. Introducing NASA astronaut Hurley.
It's a life-changing process in so many ways. Space, it's just overwhelming in some respects. Just the sensations, the shaking, the acceleration. My name is Doug Hurley, and I'm the spacecraft commander to mission to the International Space Station. This will be the first time the Dragon had a crew on board, and so there's a myriad of objectives we want to achieve for this mission. On orbit, what might not work on orbit, what would definitely work. To be able to just have the entire integrated team that's going to to and from space station, it was really neat being part of it. You know, we are the lucky ones that get to fly it, but we certainly not second take for granted the amount of effort that so many other people had to put into this to make it successful.
For Doug personally, he's worked hard, I mean, through his entire life to get to where we are right now. As a test pilot, this would be the dream. So it makes me so happy to see that he gets to be part of this mission, the spacecraft commander. I'm just glad to see his hard work and his dreams come true for that.
It's been a long road in a lot of ways for not only us, but certainly for all the folks that work in the commercial crew program, as well as SpaceX in our case, just working to get to this point.
And we're a little over 1 hour, 3.5 minutes away from launch. Now let's learn a little more about the man sitting next to Doug Hurley inside Dragon, NASA astronaut Bob Behnken.
My career at NASA has kind of spanned a couple of decades. I arrived with the class of 2000, went through the training program, primarily focused on the space shuttle and the International Space Station, learning those systems. Having launched a couple times on vehicles, you know, the second time was definitely different than the first time. You can feel a little bit guilty of, hey, should I study one more thing, one more piece of information I should get? Am I really prepared or not? So that's definitely different where I was on my first flight and where I'm at right now.
For me personally, as a spouse, watching everything that Bob has put into this 5 years, the dedication that he's shown, the perseverance is pretty special. For both of us, though, the way our minds work, it won't sort of, the mission is complete, that you have really a chance to savor it and celebrate it. This is a huge accomplishment for an Air Force flight test engineer to be the demonstration mission of a brand new vehicle. It's going to be amazing.
Without a partner that has that same appreciation, I think it can be challenging for some folks. There's a lot of work and a lot of time that takes away from family that that my spouse appreciates, and I love her for that. On a deeply personal level, I'm really excited that my son is going to get a chance to see me launch into space. Being an astronaut has been a little bit of an abstraction thing for him because he's seen me do it in old videos, but he hasn't seen me do it for real. And so I'm excited for him to see this launch. On the demo-2 mission is to make sure that we get this vehicle tested and evaluated so that we can move on to more operational missions at the International. We've got a lot of objectives on board the vehicle that we need to accomplish to really make sure that it's good to go. We'll make sure all those systems during the test flight so that the future missions will have them available even if they don't plan to utilize them. Through years of the NASA team, that experience and teaching them the lessons that we've learned by going through this, now there's another capability in the U.S. besides NASA to operate something of this. I want to thank the entire commercial crew program team that's worked together to get to this point where we've got vehicles in the launch pad ready to head to the International Space Station.
If we look even further into the distant future, flying on a mission to space will be an option for more people as SpaceX plans to also fly private astronauts on board Dragon. Earlier this year, space agreement with the space tourism company Space Adventures to fly up to 4 passengers on an orbital trip aboard Dragon as early as next year. NASA, that is making private astronaut missions to the space station a possibility. We are looking forward to these missions, and we hope that you guys are all too.
All right, we are just 20 seconds away from T-minus 1 hour. This is going to be a really big moment that everyone's going to want to listen. Expecting a weather update, obviously hoping that the weather is improving, and so we should find out in the next 10 seconds or so. So we're going to stand by for a moment for the Corps to give Bob and Doug a call, and then we'll all hear the latest.
SpaceX, we're at T-minus 1 hour. You are go for Section 6. When ready, report go for launch.
We'll put it in work.
And that right there was a call for the crew to refer to some of their final checks. You can see them checking harnesses, checking helmets, just making sure that they're strapped in and ready to go. And once they're done with that, the crew will report their readiness.
SpaceX Dragon in 6.4. Bob and I are go for launch.
Copy, go for launch, and you go to GoPro at T-minus 45.
Dragon copies.
All right, crew is go for launch. So we are inside of 1 hour, still waiting for the weather update. But I mean, this day is one for the history books, where crew launches to station from American soil on American rockets. It's been almost 9 long years since we retired the space shuttle. I remember that day. I'm going to remember this day. It's been a long road to get here, countless hours by thousands of dedicated professionals from NASA.
It's been an exciting week, but this last final hour is just so exciting right now. Today's mission will be Crew Dragon's second and its first test with humans on board. It's been an awesome countdown so far. Weather, we're still waiting for that update, so it's still a watch item. Go for launch, so at T-minus 45 minutes, hopefully we'll get an update on that weather.
We've had a really clean count so far. It started with suit up just over 3 hours ago. The SpaceX team helping Bob and Doug put on their suits, conducting initial checkouts, including an initial pressure and leak check before they got to the actual walkout. And all of that done, operations and checkout facility. The crew walkout was where Bob and Doug gave their final goodbyes to friends and family gathered outside the operations and checkout building before they began that roughly 20-minute ride to pad 39A. Really touching moment, saying goodbye to their family, both their wives and sons right in front of them.
Yeah, very touching.
It's incredible to be able to watch these moments.
And as they got into their Teslas, watch them ride all the way to the pad, and we got some great footage there. And as you can see on your screen, this is some playback from earlier of them getting into those Teslas, about to make that drive down to the pad. And once they got to the pad, they did take a minute to take in the sights, set up the fixed service structure to begin the process called crew ingress, where Bob and Doug entered. You can see on your screen as they're coming through the crew access arm, entering the white room right before they are able to ingress into the vehicle there. Again, this was from earlier.
Yeah, from earlier, and as we said, that white room, the last place on planet Earth they're standing before they climb into Dragon for the ride uphill. SpaceX carrying over a tradition it had where that was traditionally the room from Gemini, Apollo, and the space shuttle, that last place. About 30 minutes ago, with some live video here, the team was able to close Dragon's hatch with Bob and Doug safe inside. So we are under an hour ago. Things are going to pick up as we get close to the no-go to begin propellant loading and then arming the launch escape system.
The crew pull for readiness was completed at T-minus 60 minutes, and the Dragon prop load is coming up here in just about 30 seconds at T-minus 55 minutes. And then following that will be T-minus 45 minutes will be internal mission control Hawthorne pull, and then the launch director's pull for propellant loading. When we get to about T-minus 40 minutes, the crew access arm will retract. Doug will get the call to close their visors and arm the launch escape system. Automated system in place that can fire the 8 Super Draco thrusters on Dragon to quickly separate the crew from the rocket, either on the pad or during the flight on the ride uphill.
And then once we reach T-minus 35 minutes, loading for the Falcon 9 will begin. We got there on Wednesday. We got all the way down to about 17 minutes before launch before we had to cancel because of weather. But we're optimistic right now. Conditions have been improving, and so we're looking to press ahead once again into loading fuel onto that Falcon 9 rocket. Throughout the countdown, we've been getting some incredible views of the astronauts inside Dragon, just making all of their final preparations, some close-up views of their suits, displays as they just are strapped in and ready for launch. The teams often describe the suits as an extension of that Dragon spacecraft. You can always think of it as a mini craft inside of a spacecraft. It's got all of the life support, everything that they need, just like the capsule
The on countdown 1, technical poll is complete. No constraints to proceed into launch system arming and propellant load.
And there's that call out that the crew is ready. They are ready to load prop on Dragon. So we are pushing forward towards T0. And while those suits do look great, they are also engineered to directly into Dragon seats to provide communications, cooling, and the ability to pressurize if necessary.
All right, well, we did get the call out that the technical teams on the ground are ready for launch escape arming and propellant loading. Again, things starting to pick up, things really to feel real. Let's jump down real quick to the team at Kennedy. See if you got excited. I can't sit still right now. It's starting to feel real.
Yeah, it's hard to sit still in here, right, Leland?
That rocket fuel going through my veins still.
I know. It's so awesome when we see them sitting there in their suits. We're less than an hour away now. So far, things look like we might make it. We might make it. So I want to ask you what it was like the first time when you knew you were going to space.
Oh, that was February of 2008. We were in the ONC building getting the pumpkin suits on. A little bit different than the high SpaceX suits. But it was kind of surreal, you know, and to think that all of these, it took 10 years of training to fly, and it took me 10 years from when I got in the Corps in 1998 to flying in February of 2008. So it was a long road to get there. But it was so worth it and so sweet. And learning how to use the green apple, the connections for oxygen, for cooling, much different than these suits that we have here with SpaceX. And so it's a lot more complicated to go through that whole series of things that you have to do to make sure you're safe in the suit. But we've evolved, we're ready, and they look so cool and calm and collected in their suits and in the vehicle. They're focusing and getting ready to fly in space.
And there's so much excitement around the center. I know, Leland, you've been getting some messages. You got another message, or astronaut.
Yeah, Sunny Williams. Okay, so Sunny.
She's kind of the best.
She's
Sunny is awesome.
She's a commercial crew also.
She was one of the original cadre. She was 4 who trained with Bob and Doug from the beginning of the commercial crew program.
And she's one of my classmates. Look at her there. What is she wearing?
There she is. Hey,
the
Sunny.
meatball. No, she had the worm one on Wednesday, so she wore the meatball today. So
she's the best.
But now she can wear the worm ball.
The worm ball, yeah. She can mix it up. But yeah, Sunny's awesome. She's training to fly on the Boeing Starliner in the not too distant future. So really glad she's watching and showing. So thanks a lot, Sunny, for sending that note. And again, we're looking at a live view of the Crew Dragon on top of a Falcon 9 rocket. You can see the crew to the right of your screen. That's the hallway that Bob and Doug walked down to get into the White Room, which was the last place we saw them standing up before they climbed inside Dragon. Wider shot there of Launch Complex 39A, where we are inside of an hour from liftoff, and I think we're just a couple minutes away from the pole. We're going to start propellant load. Again, a 2-stage rocket there. And gosh, you guys, the weather looks not that, obviously that is not an official forecast, but it doesn't look quite as bad as it did Wednesday. We've got a little bit better odds. So the clock we're
To helium.
going to pause to listen to that comm. If you're just joining, 50 minutes from the scheduled liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket carrying Crew Dragon. And if we start to hear any kind of update on weather or polling, we will put in for that. But if things go as scheduled, we should be hearing the launch director verify go for propellant load at about T-minus 45 minutes. So we're going to send it over to Hawthorne to carry the ball. John Insprucker or Jesse, are you there?
This weather is time.
Dragon copy, go weather.
And there you heard that call out. So far, we have good weather. We are go for launch today. This is getting really exciting. I don't know about you. My heart is beating pretty fast right now.
Yeah, we've been waiting for those words since Wednesday.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we did hear a call to the crew, just in case you missed it, that they were on one final weather constraint. It was the cumulus cloud rule. They were expecting it to clear up within 10 minutes, and it's cleared up now. So we are currently go on.
Yes, and it's been pretty incredible to be so close to launch, and the road leading up to this point has been pretty incredible as well.
It has been. It's been a partnership between NASA and SpaceX. We've been working together since SpaceX started flying cargo to the International Space Station, getting ready to launch crew. And we've been really fortunate to work with not only a lot of international partners on the International Space Station, but a lot of
And as
really
a reminder
great
here,
companies.
we'll be closing doors here once we start with propellant load. Any last-minute bio breaks, please go ahead and accomplish those in the next few minutes.
And the launch director just getting the teams ready. We'll be coming up on that propellant loading again, that 35 minutes prior to liftoff, so in about 12 minutes from now. There's going to be a go, no go coming up really soon. So let's go over to our man, John Itis. John?
It's T-minus 47 minutes, 24 seconds. We're continuing to count down. As you just heard, the launch director and launch team are preparing readiness for launch poll. Now, the launch director is currently checking with Dragon mission director and NASA launch manager for their readiness. And actually, it sounds like it's good there. The launch director will then ask the team, he'll tell them the poll is open, and the 13 members of the SpaceX launch team will be electrically polled to load propellant as well as continue all the way to launch. Now, we will hear that poll results and a briefing from the launch director at about 45 minutes. The good news right now is that the weather is go. All the conditions that were red a while ago at T-minus 1 hour have cleared. We're, as the weather forecaster said, cautiously optimistic.
Countdown complete. We're go for propellant load.
Well, we got an early call out there.
And launch control clear to retract, yeah. After that, arming access, arm retract at T-minus 45 minutes.
Got an early call from Director Mike Taylor that the poll is go. You also heard the direction T-minus 45 minutes to prepare for retract of the crew arm. More discussion, we'll stop and let you listen in, but right now, weather for liftoff, ground level winds are good, 10 to 15 miles an hour, well within limit. For altitude balloons show that conditions are acceptable. The red weather conditions have cleared up, the last one being cumulus clouds. And the prilation is set at 30% right now, so that's 70% chance of good weather. We're continuing to watch. There is about a less than 10% chance. We're also watching the abort corridor off of the Atlantic coast. In case, for example, at stage separation, Dragon had to ocean. The conditions there are acceptable. There has not been lightning lately. The weather, winds are good, light rain. NASA is going to continue to watch those conditions.
T-minus 45 minutes and counting. Hold and launch escape protocol. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD, and they will approve aborting launch auto sequence and proceed to launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the station, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will immediately abort the launch auto sequence and proceed to the launch abort auto sequence. Operators shall also whether structural break or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. A reminder on fire alarm instructions. In the event of a key operators previously briefed will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, evacuate to the south-facing emergency exits directly outside. At this time, weather is go for launch.
You can see on the screen, we're inside this we're T-minus 44 minutes, 5 seconds. Crew access arm retracting away. SpaceX launch director is given to the crew. And we will be beginning propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes. So right now on Falcon 9, ready to get loading. Dragon, crew, getting configured, set up. The arm is pulling away. The range is go for launch. They continue to monitor sea space. Everything looks good. And we finally have gotten green across the board on the weather conditions, but we can't take a deep breath. We're going to have to watch the weather all the way down to T0, both here at Kennedy Space Center and out in the Atlantic in the abort zones. Now, many of you following the launch from the United States on our hotspot map. Now that we're inside an hour, we're seeing large numbers of folks logging on, tuning in from coast to coast around the world. So we'd like to know, is this your first time watching a launch live, not counting Wednesday? And if not, how many have you seen before? Using the hashtag LaunchAmerica from your favorite social media platform. And with that, at T-minus 42 minutes, 50 seconds, conditions are go. We are counting down for an on-time launch. Let's send it back over to Kennedy Space Center as the action begins to pick up on the pad.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for Section 7, close visors, and arm launch escape system.
We will put Section 7 in work.
All right, the countdown clock is continuing to tick, is continuing to beat 5 million beats a second, and we are getting so close.
SpaceX Dragon in 7.2, visors we're arming launch escape system.
Copy.
And as you just heard, the crew is arming the launch escape. That is one of the absolute last big milestones prior to liftoff, other than nominal Falcon operations.
System, and so that is something that protects them all the way to orbit. So when fueling starts at about T-minus 35 minutes, so just over 6 minutes from now, have the capability to abort, to separate from Falcon 9 either on the pad or even after liftoff. That's a critical safety capability. And we are going to go over to Hawthorne now to take us through these next minutes. Jesse?
Section switch into nitrogen.
We did hear that they are arming the launch escape system, so very exciting. SpaceX has designed Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 to be the safest launch system ever flown. So we brought back Nick Picone, SpaceX's Nick Picone, to talk more about this again. Thanks for coming back and joining us today, Nick.
Hey, Jesse. Happy to be here. Still monitoring our recovery and ground operations teams.
Awesome. And Nick was our mission manager for our in-flight abort test earlier this year and now works on the Starlink. Nick, on Wednesday, you talked about the launch escape system. Could you just give us a brief summary today for those that are joining today?
Sure. Escape system, again, is our ultimate safety feature to keep Bob and Doug safe in the event of a major Falcon anomaly on the pad. The system is designed to automatically if either vehicle detects a dangerous condition developing. And if that happens, Dragon will use its 8 Super Draco engines to push the capsule off and away to a safe distance from this Falcon. This capability is absolutely critical. It's what keeps the crew safe, and we're now active with it protecting the crew.
And as you mentioned, the launch escape system allows the Dragon to separate and get away from the vehicle, goes into the ocean. What happens after it lands safely in the ocean?
Correct. So for most of our failure modes, the success is Dragon deploying parachutes, splashing down safely in the ocean. That's recovery ships. We do that because the landing sites, we want to maintain as much flexibility as possible. There could be changing weather conditions that bring down one site and leave the other one up. So we have those 2 identical ships, one in the Atlantic, one in the Gulf of Mexico. And our space operations team can redirect the spacecraft to go to whichever site is the safest at that time.
And with the vehicle, in almost any scenario, it sounds like the vehicle will land into the ocean. And that's a gentle landing into the ocean, but it's a pretty dynamic event happening. And you mentioned there are teams that are ready to go and rescue the vehicle, astronauts on board. How do you prepare for something like that, especially with so many different scenarios that could happen?
Sure. So we're lucky to have had about a decade experience with Cargo Dragon 1 in our previous trips to the International Space Station. That, along with our booster recovery missions, we've got a great team of recovery operators here, offshore experience with our spacecraft. The system, though, that we took that experience, we built up a new crew recovery ship, 2 identical crew recovery, which have a lot of those lessons learned baked into the design of that ship and the operations. These new ships have complete medical facilities, an operational helipad, and stations, power, and propulsion to make sure they're robust and ready for anything we encounter offshore. We've also done tons of training exercises with SpaceX team and the rescue forces I mentioned earlier, practicing capsule recovery, emergency scenarios where we have to get the crew out of the capsule while they're still in the water, as well as those evacuations taking off and landing from the pad many times so that we make sure the team is ready to do that. They're all staged and ready. They feel ready to support, and will be ready to call on us if anything goes wrong today.
Awesome. It sounds like Bob and Doug are in some really good hands and will be safe no matter what occurs on the vehicle. So thank you, Nick, for joining us again, for walking us through all of those details. I hope you're just as we are for a launch coming up here very, very shortly now. So we're going to send it over to KSC to Lauren.
Thank you, Jesse. So as you just heard, fueling about to begin at T-minus 35 minutes. We are about 50 seconds away from that. And so we're getting really the first launch of astronauts into orbit from American soil since 2011. The launch escape system is armed, which, as you know, happens to and Dragon propellant load, that's the propellants that are inside of the Dragon capsule, not the rocket. Prop load for Dragon took place weeks to a few miles down the road in what we call Dragonland. And those propellants, they are methyl hydrazine, which is the fuel that we use. It's hypergolic fuel. And NTO, or nitrogen tetraoxide, that's the oxidizer. Those two come together and they ignite in space to propel the. You don't need that TTEB or a third thing to ignite because hypergolic propellants don't require it. You just need the fuel and the oxidizer. As propellant load has started on Falcon 9, and that's awesome. All right, so that that bipropellant system feeds all of the engines on. So Dragon has 12 service section engines in each. So there's 3 in each quad. 3, 3, 3. Those are used for on-orbit maneuvering for Dragon. There's also 4 additional Dracos that are underneath the nose cone for large Delta V maneuvers that the vehicle. But the engines that Nick Picone was talking about earlier are Super Draco engines. Have 2 in each quad of the vehicle, so 8 total. And those are bigger engines with a high flow propellant system, and those are what lift Dragon off of Falcon 9 in the unlikely event of emergency that requires us to get off of Falcon. Now, you probably remember, let's see, Mercury, Apollo, Soyuz, they have that big pointy tower on top. That's the escape system for those vehicles. It's actually just another rocket on top of the space that lifts the vehicle off. In the case of Dragon, our escape system is integrated into the vehicle completely. And so that's just that one less thing you have to jettison every single flight. But it also allows us to have escape capability from the pad before T0 all the way through. And so even if the very last minute, if we needed to get off of stage 2 while we're in space, we could actually escape to orbit. So yeah, that's the system for little baby Dragon here.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks for walking us through that, because I think it's really important that people understand that critical safety capability, and that's the whole point when we hear that launch system is armed. What that means is that in an instant, they can separate from Falcon 9, shoot up into the air, and they can splash down safely in the Atlantic Ocean on Dragon's parachutes. And it was designed to do that. So now that fueling is underway, it's been going on for about 2 minutes now. So they have that that safety capability ready to go on standby in an instant if they need it. And so we want to go Thorn now for an operational update from John Innsbrucker. John?
Send fuel and stage 2 fuel, all flow rates tracking nominally.
T-minus 32 minutes, counting down. These final minutes, everything's still looking good for Falcon 9 and Dragon for an on-time launch. Falcon 9 did begin at T-minus 35 minutes at planned. Now on the Falcon 9, we use a fuel and oxidizer as the propellants that power it. The fuel is commonly known as RP1. That's rocket propellant grade 1 kerosene. The oxidizer is densified liquid oxygen, also called LOX. Densified means it is kept much colder than typical for launch vehicles. This allows for more oxidizer to be loaded into the first and second stages. Now with the fuel and oxidizer on hand, we source to complete that fire triangle, as we call it. For this, Falcon 9 uses a fluid called T-Teb. It ignites in the presence of oxygen and gives off a green. Now it's hard to see on the first stage ignition due to the water that'll be spraying on the pad, but you might just see the green flare as the second stage engine ignites following operation over 2.5 minutes into flight. Now currently first stage fuel tank is about 10% full. The first stage, as a reminder, as you look on your screens, the first stage is the long white cylinder at the bottom, topped off by the black cylinder. So over 2/3 of the rocket is that first stage. Tank is getting loaded. We're also loading the liquid oxygen into the first stage also. The second stage, which is the top 1/3 between and the black cylinder, that's the white second stage, that is being loaded with fuel right now. That's about 8% loaded at the liquid oxygen loading is going to begin on second stage at T-minus 16 minutes 30 seconds. Liquid oxygen loading will continue on both all the way down to the last few minutes of the count. We're also loading helium into pressure vessels on the stages. That's used to pressurize tanks in flight as the propellant is pulled out by the strong Merlin turbopumps. On the Dragon spacecraft, astronauts are monitoring systems while the propellant is loaded into Falcon 9. We mentioned we had trained them with sounds that we had recorded on board. They've been through most of the propellant load and they are now experiencing those sounds and vibrations.
Stage 1, cryo helium load
continues
started.
to report no problems. They go to support launch. Weather, the last of the red conditions cleared up about 15 minutes. Everything is marginal but acceptable on the weather. We'll continue to watch all the way through the countdown. Now as a reminder, today we are now into a launch window now that we've begun propellant loading. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity tomorrow, 31st.
Thanks, John. For Demo 2, Bob and Doug's flight to station will take about 19 hours, and their journey is fairly similar to the trip our Dragon makes back and forth to the International Space Station, but with two noticeable differences, and that's splashdown.
And as we await T-0 in just under 29 minutes from now, the ground operations teams are doing a series of systems to make sure Dragon and Falcon 9 are both ready for liftoff. And we're continuing to get live views inside the capsule with Bob and Doug, and you're now also looking in firing room 4 there at the Cape.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon make their ascent until the first and second stage separates and sends Dragon on its way to the space station.
And at this point, mission operators will prepare Dragon for on-orbit operations, where the vehicle will execute a series of burns, gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the space station, as you can see in this animation. And just after putting Dragon into the same orbital plane as the station, the teams will get ready for Dragon's approach and docking maneuvers.
The next Dragon will approach and actually dock with the space station. And this is a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo deliveries in the past, which use a process called berthing. Berthing spacecraft to approach the station and then stop so a crew member can maneuver the station's robotic arm to capture the spacecraft. Docking on this version of Dragon can be done with no crew on board the station. It's typically a faster process, both when arriving and leaving, but it does still require pinpoint accuracy to approach.
Once captured, a spacecraft then gets attached to a common berthing mechanism, the same type of port that we use to connect each of the modules on the station together. It's a little bit of a process, but the hatches are significantly larger than the docking ports, which make for all the operations following that final departure maneuver. That's going to include events like the trunk separation, closing of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, and then eventually as they get into the atmosphere of the drogue and the main parachutes, and all of that ends with splashdown right off the Florida coast. At that point, teams from SpaceX will move in with their ship, grab the capsule out of the water, and work to get Bob and Doug out of Dragon after a successful mission in space. So we are 26 minutes away from launch. Falcon 9 is continuing. Let's check in one more time down with the team at Kennedy. Murray?
All right, thanks, Dan. We are so pumped. Things have cleared up, and it looks like we might actually do this today. If you're just joining us, we are now 25 minutes, 46 seconds, and counting from the first launch of International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. This will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. And we want to share with you the results of a poll we asked a little earlier. If you could go to the moon, now it's not where the astronauts are going today, they're going to the space station, but moon, would you rather visit the South Pole where no one has been before or the Apollo 11 landing site? And it was a pretty even split. We had of you say you would go to the moon's south pole, and 54% of you would go to the Apollo 11 landing site. I kind of side with the Apollo because I'm a history buff and I want to see where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin set foot. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Lauren, which place would you go?
I'm with you on that. Love to go see that flag there and those footsteps, those footprints there. Still be there, right? There's no wind there.
Should still be there. Leland, how about you?
I think I'm with both. It's just like, the meatball, the classic.
Yeah.
Going to the classic spot, and that's where all of it started. That's where all that inspiration came, even though I'm an engineer, not seeing it. But besides that, that's history.
And hopefully, maybe it wouldn't have to be one or the other.
That's true.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we're going to learn more from going where we've never been before.
Exactly.
And so we need to go to the South too. And we are thrilled to see all of you following along online. Thank you for answering. I'm going to go over to Tahira, who's been monitoring all the action with less than 25 minutes to go. Tahira, I'm sure things are heating up online.
Hey, Marie, I mean, you're completely right. Now that we have that go for launch, people are on the edge of their seat right now waiting on this moment to take flight. As you can see, photos are still coming in of just everyone around the country showing their excitement for this launch. And it's really been a touching thing to everyone's kept this excitement going from Wednesday's first attempt. So we just took a look at numbers, and we are now over 3 million people tuning in for this historic. And so for me personally, I just want to wish Bob and Doug the best of luck. This will be the first time watching humans lift off to space from the United States, and it's just going to be a super emotional moment. For that, Marie, back to you at Kennedy for these before launch.
All right, thanks, Tahira. And Leland, we got 23 minutes and some change to go. What do you think Bob and Doug are feeling right now?
They're very calm, cool, and collected as test pilots, but I think they're thinking about what are the steps that I have to take if a malfunction or something happens. And so it's all kind of automated. But if something happens where they have to intervene with those touch screens, that's what they're thinking.
And we're just inside 23 minutes now today. We were 5 minutes further in the countdown when we heard that call to scrub, and the weather was still very touch and go at this point on Wednesday. But today, it at least for right now, I don't want to jinx it. I'm afraid to even say it out loud, but it looks better today.
Yeah, and it feels like feeling it a lot more than I did on Wednesday.
Right.
And speaking of Bob and Doug and them being really calm and cool and collected, haven't had the opportunity to be in meetings with them train. I have to say, and to all of my friends who work with them every single day, the feedback is always just what great people they are,
right.
and just how bright and sharp they are, but just good people.
Right.
And around the office, we often refer to them as the dads.
Yeah. The dads?
They're
What is
the
that?
dads. They are dads,
Okay.
and we've met their families. And when you see people on that very personal level, it starts to mean so much. They
Right.
are a part of our team. You know,
Yeah.
they're not a customer. They're our team. They're not a payload. They're our
Right.
team. They're and so we're just so excited to see the dads up there today.
Yeah. Go dads.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go send it over to Gary. Update from Houston. Gary?
The space station team here is focused. All eyes are on the system checks that are happening across the board, and we're listening in as we close in on launch. And I can tell you that very good. Chris Cassidy will be watching from the International Space Station right now, flying over the Pacific Ocean. It's heading to cross right over the launch pad. We might even get some good views from the station. Hope to be capturing those. We'll have the launch view and the big screen up front, and everyone's excited to see our 2 crew members on their way to the International Station. But before we get to it, I just want to pass on good luck from the entire flight operations community in Houston. It's always exciting to be doing something wholly new and history-making with station operations, and we can't wait to see our team members Bob and Doug in and heading to the International Space Station. That's it from us here in Mission Control Houston. I'll send it back over to the team in Hawthorne for the latest happening there. John.
T-minus 20 minutes, 30 seconds. We're
Strong
continuing
backfill
to
started.
count down. Everything is still looking good for launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon. 22 minutes, seconds after the hour.
Stage
Right
2
now on the
RP1
right-hand
load is complete.
side, you can see a large white cloud coming off of the strongback. That is normal. As we get ready to load the second stage with liquid oxygen, we have to chill in the plumbing lines going strongback. And so as we relieve pressure, the moist, humid Florida air condenses around, that gives you the cloud. So that tells us that things are actually on schedule. We did begin propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes. Fuel loading on the second stage, I believe we just heard the call out that it is complete. First stage fuel load is continuing, and right now that's a little more than, that's about 60% of the way full. So things are looking good. Second stage is getting ready to begin the liquid oxygen loading. After they finish chilling in the lines that you see on the monitor, they'll begin the load at T-minus 16, 30 seconds. The range right now is go, ready to support. Weather continues to be go. As we inch our way close, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're waiting to hear if anybody issue, but for the moment, as you can see on the screen, it looks good. Now on the Dragon side, the Dragon mission director and the team there are reporting no issues. They've done their communications checkouts. The crew access RC is retracted away from the spacecraft. The crew is strapped in and they are ready to go. Now final instructions will be going to the crew at T-minus. The crew displays will be configured for launch, and that setup will give astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley insight into how the launch is and provides constant updates on vehicle health. We've already heard the crew give their go and get ready for launch. For Dragon, it'll enter terminal count at T-minus 5 minutes. When it transitions to internal power, we'll hear continued callouts on the countdown net as we get close to 0 and to liftoff. But right now at T-minus 18 minutes, 15 seconds, everything continues to be go for an on-time launch. So Dan, Jesse, looking pretty good. How are they doing over at your stand?
Things are great from about 15 feet away from you, John, and honestly, things are looking pretty great down at the pad. A lot more blue in the sky. Green is the color we want when we're talking about weather, and that's where we're sitting right now. So we're continuing to count down. We are under 18 away from liftoff. Again, it's an instantaneous liftoff it's going to be 12:22 and 45 seconds here on the West Coast, 3:22 and 45 seconds over on the East Coast there in Florida. Just a reminder, it's going to be about a 9-minute ride up to with the Falcon 9 and Bob and Doug on board Dragon. It'll be a 2-stage flight. See the first stage fly until we hear MECO, or main engine cutoff, about 2.5 minutes into flight. After that, the second stage will take over and continue the rest of the way. Second engine cutoff comes in just under 9 minutes at about 8 minutes and 44 seconds. Following that second stage completing its job, it'll continue to coast for about 3 minutes. A slight attitude adjustment and null out any rate, so make sure it's not in any kind of a spin before they do separation. So that's when the Dragon space physically separate from the Falcon 9 vehicle, and Bob and Doug will be flying free. It's about a 19-hour ride if we launch on time. So that means Bob and Doug will get on orbit. They'll have a number of burns or those firings of those Draco thrusters that they'll do over
Stage 2 lock started.
We hear the locks. The liquid oxygen load has now started on stage. But again, they're going to be doing a series of burns on the way uphill towards the International Space Station 5, spread out over the first 16 hours or so, up until they get much closer, and it's time for that approach and docking. And we are expecting that with an on-time launch to happen today. That'll be coming tomorrow in the afternoon. All right, now that we're under 16 minutes away, we have a special guest joining us. I'm going to toss it over to Jesse.
We are T-minus 15 minutes and 45 seconds off of our second demonstration mission today, and we have the honor of having SpaceX's President and COO, Gwen Shotwell, join us. Thanks, Gwen, for coming out and taking a few minutes to chat with us.
Thanks, Jesse.
We've been on console. How's the countdown been going so far in there?
Countdown is clean today, just like it was Wednesday. We did clear the weather hurdles sooner than we did on Wednesday. And the only thing we're watching right now is downrange weather and lightning at the staging location.
Of course.
But we will clear that hurdle at 7 minutes.
Awesome, great, very exciting. Now I'm going to throw it back to 2012 because you were on console for Dragon when it was first made to the space station. How does that experience compare to today?
Stage 2 locks is on the DPUs
So
and
I was
Dragon
nervous
on the way.
then. I stopped getting nervous for launches. Today I'm nervous, super nervous, stomach and throat.
Understandable.
No, it's a fantastic day today. I'm really excited. The team is pulled together. It's a professional operation. And when I say team, by the way, I mean SpaceX and NASA. These folks have been working incredibly hard and have done a fantastic job.
Yes, and we are all so excited. And we know that you have to get back inside of mission control, but is there anything that you wanted to say before liftoff to NASA and...
Well, I want to thank NASA, of course, for their generosity and their help with getting to this place. I want to thank SpaceXers who have come together to make this moment in history. And I want to thank Elon for hiring me.
We thank Elon for hiring you as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll let you get back to mission control. And good luck today.
Thanks, Jesse. And Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
Well, we are so excited. We are just a few minutes away from countdown. So we're going to turn it over to Dan and John for the final minutes in terminal count. Take it away, John.
T-minus 13 minutes, 30 seconds into countdown. We're continuing to load fuel onto the first stage. That should finish up in just about 6 minutes. Completely loaded on the second stage. That's closed out. And we are continuing to load liquid oxygen on both the first and second stage. The liquid oxygen on the second stage just about 3.5 minutes ago. We are also loading helium into the storage vessels on the first and second stage, getting in the last little bits of helium when we keep it cryogenic, cold, and that gets us, just like we do with liquid oxygen, the maximum amount into the storage volume so that we can get the most performance out of the vehicle. Right now, we are in a fairly quiet state on the vehicle, continuing to put the propellant in to first and second stages. Next significant issue, callouts that we're going to hear will probably be inside the T-minus 10 minute. They talk to the crew. We'll listen for that. But at the moment, everything continuing at T-minus 12 minutes and 20 seconds.
We're getting real close now, John. It's only a little over 12 minutes away. Reminder for everybody, it's about a 9-minute ride uphill. We'll have some dueling boxes going on as that first stage is going to be coming home while the second stage is carrying Bob and Doug into orbit. But obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on our astronauts the whole way uphill. Some of the calls that you'll be hearing, as there will be performance calls over the Dragon to ground the entire way uphill. And you'll just, the SpaceX engineers calling out trajectories and booster performance. So we're always looking for that word nominal. I know that's one of John's favorite words. That's one of mine too. We want to hear nominal as much as possible up on the way uphill. You might also hear some number and letter combinations, and those correspond to the different abort zones that Bob and Doug are in during their flight uphill. There's 1A and 1B, which signify that they're on the first stage. Those carry them from there in the Cape all the way up to about the very top of North Carolina. Have 2A through 2E or 2 Echo, and that will be on the second stage, and that goes from North Carolina all the way up to about the tip of Newfoundland, so in the northern Atlantic. And then there is a zone of the northern Atlantic that we're going to avoid, and so you should hear the call out be something similar to forward, and that just refers to Shannon, Ireland, which they'll be going off the coast of Ireland at the later stages of the second stage have to abort. So just prepping you now for some of those calls. You're hopefully going to hear that word nominal a whole lot on the way uphill. 10.5 minutes. Things are quiet. As John I said, it'll pick up right at about 10 minutes. We'll wait for the crew just to confirm that their displays are in order. The crew is already reported that they are go for launch, and we'll continue to watch the fuel gauges tick up on the Falcon 9 vehicle until fueling cuts off at just about 2 minutes prior to launch.
Dragon, SpaceX confirmed displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon displays are configured for launch.
Copy. Bob, Doug, on behalf of the entire SpaceX team, it's been a huge honor to help you get ready for today's historic mission. Know that we're with you. Have an amazing flight and enjoy those views of our beautiful planet.
Thanks, Jay. It is absolutely our honor to be part of this huge effort to get the United States back in the launch. We'll talk to you for more, but thank you.
Copy all. Thanks for those words.
This course, so again, that voice that's going to be talking to Bob and Doug throughout their mission from right here in Hawthorne, just offering a few quick words. The crew did confirm their crew displays are configured for launch. We are coming up on 9 minutes and counting.
We've gotten through T-minus 10 minutes with the crew discussions. I'm now going to switch over to Falcon 9. Our next major event comes at T-minus 7 minutes, what we call engine chill. Pre-valves will open. Those currently separate propellants on the first stage from getting down to the Merlin engines. We'll open the pre-valves. That allowed fuel liquid oxygen to flow to the pumps. And more importantly, when we open the valves, that allow us to begin chilling the 9 Merlin 1D turbo pumps on the first stage engine. It'll take a few minutes to get them cold enough to where they would then be ready to pass the large amounts of liquid oxygen through the pumps and into the main thrust chambers. We get to engine ignition at T-minus 2 seconds. We don't want to try to run highly chilled liquid oxygen through a warm pump. Flash that into gas, and running gas through a high-speed pump is not a good thing. So right now, we are waiting for T-minus 7 minutes. That'll start the engine chill. Shortly after that, we will also get the fuel shutdown. Listening to the SpaceX launch director in the background there. As I mentioned, at T-minus, as we start the chill, we will also get into the final topping off of stage, and then the fuel load will complete.
Stage 1 and Stage 2 engine chill has started.
Call out Stage 1 engine chill has started. That's gone up to the crew so that they've got situational awareness. As I mentioned, the pre-valves are open, and now we are topping off first stage fuel, getting ready to finish the fuel load. Liquid oxygen load on first and second
Engine
stage
hydraulics at pressure
will continue until the last 3 to 2 minutes of the count.
should hear that call out RP1 load complete coming up in about 6 minutes. Again, RP1 is just that densified carrier or that rocket fuel that Falcon 9 is going to be used to power Bob and Doug to orbit today.
And stage 1 fuel is closed out.
Right on time. That call out indicates that the fuel loading on the first stage is complete. Draining back the lines now, so first and second stage fuel are complete. Liquid oxygen loading is continuing on both stages. You can see on the view on the left side of the monitor, the station, the cold gas wrapped around the stages as the tank skins are chilled, densified liquid oxygen, picking up the humidity from the Florida air.
It looks like at this moment we're a little more than 90% full on the oxidizer on the first stage, up towards that 80% mark on the second stage. We'll be counting down all the way till about 2 or 3 minutes, as John and I just said, until everything is loaded in.
Closing out.
And then we will be go for launch.
Dragon has transitioned to configure for terminal. Vehicle tanks pressing for strong back retract.
We're pressurizing the Falcon 9 tanks. We're going to open the clamp arm around it and begin to retract the strong back. We'll move back about 2 degrees. That'll get us to the liftoff position. At liftoff, the strong back will then recline about 45 degrees away.
Start. Stage 2, RP1 bleed.
Launch director called out the strong back retracted on the left. You'll see it go back just a couple of degrees.
Stage 1, RP1.
We are just 4 minutes away from liftoff. Again, at this moment, Bob and Doug are really just laser focused on those displays. They have insight directly into Dragon and the Falcon 9. They're able to see where their fuel loading is at, how everything's progressing down with the count.
Final setup started.
Three and a half minutes from launch.
And the strong back is now reclining away from the Falcon 9.
MVAC igniter purges. Open. Dragon has transit count and is on internal power. Stage 1, LOX load closed out.
Okay, we're at T-minus 2 minutes, 42. Stage 1 LOX load is closed out. Stage 2 will continue to load for about another half a minute or so. Once we get the completion of Stage 2 LOX, have to vent down the line, so you'll see another large white cloud coming off of the strongback. That'll be normal. That'll happen
Vehicle
around
is transitioning to
1 minute and 40 seconds. We're going on internal power now.
Just a few seconds away from the Stage 2 LOX load being complete. It's been almost 9 years since we've been in this position. A lot of work done by thousands of people to get to this point. All our eyes focused on 2 now.
Stage 2 LOX load is closed out. Propellant fills are complete. Dragon is in auto idle.
Stage 2 LOX load complete. All fuel, all oxidizer on Falcon 9. 1 minute, 34 seconds to go till launch.
Ground gas closeouts is starting.
Falcon 9 is in startup and countdown. FTS is armed for launch.
Under a minute now, the FTS, the flight termination system, has been.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon for launch. Let's light this candle.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Stage 1 tanks pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
America has launched. And so rises a new era of American spaceflight, and with it the ambitions of a new generation continuing the dream. 20 seconds into flight, station is nominal.
T plus 30 seconds into this mission. Flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9, and look at them go.
Falcon power telemetry nominal.
M1D throttle down.
We're throttling down to get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the good. Reports say all systems are go.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We've exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
M1 up.
We're throttling back up to full power as we're through max Q.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
And we heard that 1 Bravo call out. That's just the second abort zone that they're in. They'll continue to be on this until the first stage is done. It's switch over to the second. At this point, Bob and Doug pulling about 2.3 Gs, 2.3 times the Earth's gravity, already moving at over 15 miles per hour.
We've heard the call out for MVAC engine chill. That's getting the MVAC engine ready to light. That'll come at about 2:44 into flight. Right now, everything continuing to look good. Next major event coming up is going to be the triple. We'll have main engine cutoff of the 9th engines, stage separation, and then ignition of the second stage engine to continue to carry astronauts into orbit. Coming up in about 20 seconds.
M1D throttle down.
We heard we're throttling down the Merlin engines on the first stage. And we have Miko.
Miko.
2 Alpha.
Falcon stage separation confirmed.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
MVAC ignition.
All right, we have stage separation confirmed. The first stage beginning its flight back. The second stage being power single Merlin 1D vacuum engine has ignited and is now carrying Bob into orbit. So they're going to continue under the power of this second stage.
Stage 2 propulsion is nominal.
Which will cut off at SECO, or second engine cut, minutes and 44 seconds into today's flight. So a little over 5 minutes to go still on this second stage. You heard the call out 2 Alpha, so they're now in the longest abort zone that carries them all the way from about North Carolina up the eastern, almost to Canada. Things looking good though, getting good call outs, nominal propulsion on that second stage. Bob and Doug continuing to make orbit.
Dragon SpaceX nominal trajectory. Acquisition of signal in Bermuda.
SpaceX Dragon nominal trajectory.
All right, here in nominal trajectory, so Dragon pointed in the right direction, continuing to make their flight uphill. Acquisition of signal Bermuda, that's one of the other ground stations that they're using to get telemetry and data back from this spacecraft.
Stage 2 propulsion is still nominal.
A little over 4 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight. Bob and Doug flying at more than 5,600 miles
Dragon
per hour.
SpaceX nominal trajectory.
Already almost 200 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Nominal trajectory continuing. And while they continue uphill, looks like we are getting a view of the first stage as well.
Yep, on your right screen, see that first stage with the grid fins deployed. It's making its way back to attempt to land on, of course, I Still Love You Today. And we're just about a couple minutes away from the entry burn, and that's where 3 of the Merlin engines do ignite to help slow the vehicle down as it re-enters back into the Earth's atmosphere. And then after the entry burn will be the one which is just a single engine
Dragon
burn.
SpaceX nominal trajectory.
And you heard
Nominal
starting
trajectory.
chill for entry burn. There's that car still on a nominal trajectory on Dragon, still on second stage, and that's that MVAC engine on second stage on your left screen. Again, on your right screen is that first stage booster coming back towards our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. We're about a minute from entry burn.
Meanwhile, stage continuing to power Dragon into orbit. Again, if you're keeping an eye on that timer, that's going to continue to burn until 8 minutes and 44 seconds into flight. So a little over 2 minutes from now, we'll hear the call out SECO. It'll then be a little over 3 minutes until Dragon physically separates from the second stage of the Falcon 9 after the upper
Dragon
stage gets a
SpaceX
chance.
nominal trajectory.
Dragon copies, nominal trajectory.
Continuing to check in with Bob and Doug as they are on a trajectory. Just about 10 seconds away from that first stage, starting that entry burn on your right screen. We should be able to see that live.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
There is that entry burn
Acquisition
beginning.
signal, New Hampshire.
This burn lasts about 36 seconds long.
Stage 2 FTSs.
While that entry burn continues, we're just about a minute away from SECO. We'll have a number of events all happen in rapid succession. It'll be the cutoff.
Stage 1
We'll
entry
be
burn
looking
shut
for
down.
that stage 1 landing burn shortly after.
Yeah, actually, just within a few seconds of each. It's such a cool view on your left screen, seeing Bob and Doug on Dragon. Right now, you can see the displays that they're seeing right now themselves.
Terminal guidance.
MVAC throttle step.
Up 25 seconds or so away from SECO, or second engine cutoff.
This is also the point where Bob and Doug are experiencing the G-force. We're seeing the counter tick up to right about 1.8.
Copy, Shannon.
And so that just means they're in their final abort zones. If they were to abort at this point, would either be an abort to orbit or to land off the coast of Ireland. Standing by for second
Stage 1 landing
cutoff
startup.
confirmation.
MVAC throttle step. MVAC shut down.
Stage 1 landing layer.
Confirmation of SECO's second engine cutoff.
Now waiting for our first stage to make its way to our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You.
Dragon SpaceX nominal orbital insertion.
Launch
It's
escape system
confirmation
is disarmed.
nominal
Copies,
insertion.
nominal
Stage
orbital
1 landing leg
insertion.
deploy.
And what you're seeing on your screen is a live view of our drone ship, where our first stage will be coming. Looks like we lost that live view, but we'll wait for confirmation of that landing shortly here.
Falcon 9 first stage. We landed
And
aboard,
there
of
you
course,
can
I
see
still
on
love
your screen, Falcon 9 has landed. This is the first Falcon 9 to carry
Acquisition of signal,
humans to
Newfoundland.
it, so very exciting for us. And as you can see on your right, Doug are still making their way to their targeted orbit.
M1D to recovery 1.
So exciting today.
M1D.
The It doesn't stop.
It does not stop.
We did hear again that call out, good orbital insertion, so that means Falcon 9 and Dragon right now exactly where they're supposed to be.
And we need a FRC, everyone.
And it's right at about 12 minutes when Dragon will separate. If we saw a 0G indicator floating around there, I know Bob and Doug owe us a little bit about what exactly that is that they brought up with them.
And before separation, before Dragon initiates separation from the second stage, they do ensure that the vehicle is not spinning and it is in good condition before we separate.
That's right, the upper stage does small attitude maneuver using some cold gas thrusters built into the rocket itself.
Exactly, so we do expect that separation to occur in about a minute from now, but they do wait until they have full confirmation that it is ready to separate. Such cool view. I cannot get over this view that we are seeing right now. Bob and Doug on the right screen, Crew Dragon out in space.
Yeah, already 200 kilometers over planet Earth, or a little over 124 miles, traveling in excess of 2,700 meters, 27,000 meters per second, or about 16,000 miles per hour. You know, we're just standing by. That separation event should be coming up shortly. Then they'll begin a series of checks on the Draco thrusters that are going to be used to maneuver and then power Dragon on its flight to the International Space Station. Standing by for separation.
Expected loss of signal, wallops.
It had an expected LOS loss of signal with one of the ground stations. Waiting for confirmation now of that.
Dragon separation confirmed.
Dragon's been confirmed.
There is a great view right in front of you of Dragon separating.
Separation confirmed.
And there's that call out. Dragon is now officially making its way to the International Space Station today.
Dragon SpaceX with that separation call. We have a few words for you from our Falcon 9 team.
Standing by.
Dragon, Chief Engineer on Dragon to Ground. Bob Doug, on behalf of the entire launch team with Falcon 9 today, we hope you enjoyed the ride and wish you a great mission.
Thanks, Bala. Congratulations to you and the F9 team for the first human for Falcon 9, and it was incredible. Appreciate all the hard work, and thanks for the great ride to space.
Copy all.
Oh, and Mike, proud of you guys and the rest of the team. Thank you so much for what you've done for us today, putting America back into from the Florida coast.
Copy all. Good luck. Godspeed.
All right, so Bob and Doug are in
Dragon
space.
SpaceX, we confirm nominal ECLS activation and service section Draco checkouts. Nose cone deploys in progress.
Copy all.
The Corps here in Hawthorne giving the crew a heads up that we have confirmation the nose cone is deploying. So again, that nose cone is going to open up a little bit more than 90 degrees, goes up to 105 degrees, and that's going to expose the actual docking ring and the hatch that they're going to be going through once they attach to the International Space Station. 4 of those Draco thrusters, we call them the forward bulkhead thrusters, they're going to be used for these major phase burns or firings of those thrusters to actually raise their gradually over the coming hours. Also heard good activation of the ECLS, that's the Environmental Control and Life Support System. That's everything in their atmosphere, just keeping Dragon a nice, safe, habitable environment where they're going to be living for the next 19 hours until they arrive at the space station.
Exactly, and Falcon 9's job may be done for today, but the mission is not over. Crew Dragon's job is not done. As you can see, Bob and Doug are still Crew Dragon making their way. It will be a 19-hour trip to the International Space Station before they dock tomorrow morning. And such cool views. I love that we can get these live views here and see and watch what they're doing now that they're in orbit.
Yeah, it's incredible to just be looking over their shoulder, to be along for the ride. And we're going to be with them, and we're going to be with all of you the entire way for their journey to the space station. We're going to be covering live throughout. Bob and Doug will have a sleep period where they'll get about 8 hours of sleep a little bit later today before they wake up for all of their final approach. One of the major things we are looking forward to in the next couple of is going to be their first turn at the controls. So they're actually going to be using those touchscreens, take control, and manually pilot Dragon. We'll walk you through what that's going to look like, and assuming we have some good ground station coverage, we'll be able to get views from right inside Dragon, looking over their shoulder as they manipulate the controls at the play. But I mean, we had a smooth ride uphill, both stages of the doing their job, placing Bob and Doug into orbit. I mean, this is a day, this is a historical day. This is us kicking off that new era of space flight that we've all been talking about and longing for since the space came to an end in 2011.
Yes.
And the weather cooperated.
Yes, second time's a charm.
Right.
All right, so day for the history books. As you can see, we have lost some live signal there, but the mission still continues, and we're going to send it over to KSC to continue broadcasting live with you.
Loss of signal, Newfoundland.
Yeah, we are just in awe over here. When I woke up this morning and looked at the weather forecast, I was like, man, we're going to be back here on Sunday, but we did it. The room, everybody was outside watching, and inside the lights were shaking, the cameras were shaking. Lauren came back in with tears in her eyes. This is really
I can't believe it. I saw it with my own eyes. This is I'm a little bit speechless. Just so grateful that I'm up there, and there's a lot more to go. But I'm so happy they're safe right now. I'm just so happy.
Yeah. Leland, you were talking about it. It's amazing what we can do when we work together.
Yes, American astronauts on an American rocket from American soil, showing you what Americans can do when we come together as a team. Blast Doug and Bob off to the cosmos. This is what it's all about, and their families and everyone is working together to take them up to space. I don't know what to say. That rocket fuel is still in my veins, and I want to go get on the rocket.
Well, it's too late now, maybe.
I know.
But we want to go over to Daryl at OSB2. He's there with the administrator, who hopefully has more words than we do, because we're still kind of speechless. Daryl?
Incredible here, Marie, at the Operations Support Building, where a chorus of applause has been happening from the beginning of launch and throughout the various stages. Very special guests were here to watch it. That includes President Donald Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, who joins me. You were with the President and the Vice President. America's back, launching human astronauts again. Tell me how you feel about that, and tell me about watching launch and what happened there.
So this has been a long time coming. It's been 9 years since we've launched American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. It's done. We have done it. It's been way too long. I want to give a lot of credit to Charlie Bolden. He was my predecessor as the NASA administrator. He fought hard at a time when it didn't get any support in Congress. We now have an administration that is fully supportive of our spaceflight initiative, the exploration, discovery, going to the moon, onto Mars, but also from a Space Force perspective. Our budgets are going up, things are strong, and today was just an amazing day. You know, one of the things the President did right out of the gate when he became President is called the National Space Council. And he put the Vice President as chairman of the National Space Council. And on that National Space Council, you've got the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, all of these different amazing individuals that deal with space day in and day out. A lot of people don't realize how many of the federal government deal with space. And the Vice President invited those members of the National Space Council here as well. So we just had, and then we had bipartisan members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, who have been involved in supporting this program, for a long time now. So